In the first days of the North Kingdom, they built a great watchtower on Weathertop. Amon Sûl, they called it. It was burned and broken, and nothing remains of it now but a tumbled ring, like a rough crown on the old hill's head. Yet once it was tall and fair. It is told that Elendil stood there watching for the coming of Gil-galad out of the west, in the days of the last alliance. I'm guest co-host Zachary Heller, and you're listening to the Amon Sûl podcast.
My Govanen, welcome to Amon Sûl, a podcast for tall hobbits with elvish aspirations. I'm Father Anthony, an Orthodox Christian priest, and here we talk about the works of J.R.R. Tolkien because we love them, and we believe in their power to orient us toward what is highest and noblest. Today, my guest co-host is once again Zachary Heller, who listeners may remember is a great aficionado of cinema in general, and of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films in particular. That makes him our favorite go-to guy when it comes to comparing the two versions of the Lord of the Rings story that people have in their minds, the books and the movies. Professionally, he continues to serve in lay ministry at Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Toledo, Ohio, and he's also a beautiful friend. So welcome back to Amon Sûl, Zach.
Thank you for that introduction, Father. It's a blessing to be back, and of course, it's always a joy to talk one of my favorite things with, a dear friend, of course.
Yeah, and, it's funny. I had thought it was just a few months ago that you came on, but it's actually exactly 1 year since your first appearance on the podcast. It was the March episode before, and it will be the March episode again. Now, that time, you joined us to talk about the Shortcut to Mushrooms chapter, and also to provide your reflections on the story as you read it for the first time. Now, dear listener, Zach has made a tremendous sacrifice. He started reading Lord of the Rings to be with us, and then he delayed his read-through in order that he could continue to be with us. So he's matching our pace through the book, and he's coming back today to discuss our retrospective of the entirety of Book 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring, which is to say the first 11 chapters, I believe, maybe it's 12. The chapters from, the beginning of the book through the arrival at the Ford of Bruinen. So we're going to be focusing especially on what we haven't already discussed with Zach, starting from the house at Crickhollow and moving through to the Ford of Bruinen that we reached last episode. So I'm excited to have you back, Zach. I'm really glad we get to talk about this with you. And I actually rewatched the movies a little bit myself just so that I'm prepared to have opinions.
Sure.
But before we get to all of that, we're going to take a moment to get to know Zach a little bit more. So last time, Zach, you told us how you first came to connect with Tolkien's works, and when we asked what character you'd most like to be like, you said Gandalf, which is a great choice. But this time, can you tell us what is the location in Tolkien's legendarium in which you would like to live or visit, and why?
I believe I've settled on Numenor before the fall. And the reason I picked that is because as of now, in my reading, I have browsed parts of the Silmarillion, but I have not read it front to back, as it were. And I've always had a passing fascination with Atlantis as a concept, and it seems like that is what Tolkien was inspired by when he created Numenor. And there's this feeling of mysteriousness that goes along with it, as of right now for me, of course. That feeling may or may not dissipate when I finally read the Silmarillion. I'll have to get back to you on that. But I like this idea of coming from Lord of the Rings, where there's, as far as we can tell, or at least you see in the movies, there's one really big stronghold of men, right? It's Minas Tirith, the White City of Gondor, right? And then, but what would another city of man look like, right? We see what we see Erebor with the dwarves and the Hobbit, and then we see Rivendell and Lothlorien in Lord of the Rings. But what would a stronghold of men look like?
Sure.
Way back. So I think Numenor would be a great place to visit, before the fall, of course.
Well, the exciting thing is Tolkien did write a few little snippets of what that would have looked like, and they're
Cool.
beautiful. They mostly show up in the Unfinished Tales,
Okay.
which is actually the first book that was published by Christopher Tolkien after the Silmarillion, but before he got into the whole history of Middle-earth thing. But it includes a description of the island of Numenor, and a story actually that's set among the kings of Numenor, kind of coming down. And I think Numenor is a beautiful pick, especially for an Orthodox Christian, because the way that he describes the thinking and the mindset of the kings and of the people of Numenor is, to my mind, sort of an idealized, sense of what a Christian Constantinople would have felt like.
That's interesting.
At its most pious. Maybe Mount Athos in its heyday. If Constantinople were like Mount Athos, I look forward to hearing one of these days, when you get around to reading some of that, what your response is, because there are some really beautiful passages there.
It's real quick. I apologize. It's cool that you say that, because when I was growing up reading history books and whatnot, they would illustrate what the city might have looked like, right? Insert whatever city here. And it was always fascinating to think about that, right? Because, take a Greek city, for example, just because that's what I got off the top of my head. You've got the ruins across the country, but then you'd have artist interpretation. So they piqued my interest even further with that.
Well, sure. But the thing is, what would it be like if it weren't a ruin? What would it be in its heyday of beauty and
right. Of course.
The reality is Constantinople was always, enmeshed in that, Roman history as well as its Christian sensibilities. But anyway, I could get lost in this.
Right.
Numenor is a beautiful image of a whole society of men. Not whole as in like it's all of the strata are depicted, but it's whole, it's healthy, it's right. In right relationship with itself and with the elves and with the Valar and with God, and anyway.
Right. And now, if I'm not mistaken, that's pre-Forging of the Rings, correct?
Yes, I believe we could say that. I mean, although the Forging of the Rings really is irrelevant to Numenor in the beginning.
Sure.
And of course, it becomes extremely relevant later on, but yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's an accurate statement. Yeah. So, dear listener, if you disagree that the Forging of the Rings originally is irrelevant to Numenor and only becomes relevant later, please write in and tell me where I'm wrong. But I love that answer, Zach. Very nice.
Oh God.
All right. So let's get now to some of your questions and comments, dear listener. Our first note is actually from longtime listener Sam Cook. Sadly, no relation, although I've had the chance to meet Sam a couple times, I think. Sam has actually been one of our most faithful correspondents. He's written a great many encouraging notes over the last year and before. So, Sam, thank you for your enthusiasm and support. I'm glad we can finally get one of your notes on here. Zach, would you read this one?
Most certainly. Father Anthony, in the most recent episode, there was a mention of how Sam is the only one of the hobbits who doesn't get referred to as Mr. I noticed something similar around 2 years ago or so. I observed that one part of the story that might not occur to most Americans due to cultural differences is that it's about an English country gentleman from a well-off family bringing two of his cousins and his gardener on an adventure. I haven't quite gotten through this episode yet. As I said in person at LOSCon, the Haldus episode, which was the newest at the time, was one that I had to take numerous breaks from in order to get through. The other ones haven't been quite as long, but I'd have trouble listening to the whole thing in one sitting. I fully understand. In the Ancient Faith podcast hosted by my godmother, I'm a recurring guest, and I expect to be recording another one this week about our experience playing a Baldur's Gate 3 multiplayer campaign with our priest and one other person over the past year, which concluded a couple of weeks ago. On each recording, if she hadn't called it for time or I was otherwise not stopped, I'd probably have been willing to talk for hours. Sam Cooke.
So Sam brings up a number of valuable subjects here. Baldur's Gate 3, I actually can't speak to, although I'm guessing maybe you can, Zach, from your response. But that question of the social status of Sam Gamgee, not Sam Cooke, and that actually, I think it was 2 episodes ago with my brother, Father Timothy, that we were talking about this. And when he brought up Sam is the only one who doesn't get the Mr. title, his point was to emphasize what otherwise might be missed, that both Merry and Pippin are, in fact, very important persons in Hobbit terms as the respective heirs of the Took and Brandybuck families. Well, rather, the Brandybuck and Took families, to get the order right. But Sam, I think, your point about Sam Gamgee is also really, it's important to note that because, Merry and Pippin are very important, but Sam is striking in being, in normal terms, not important at all. Not even the sort of person that Gandalf would ever have bothered to send off on an adventure, as it seems. He seems to have picked on the Took family more than anything. Sam's just not important until suddenly he is. What does that say about social mobility or not in the Shire? Is that what Tolkien's trying to say? I don't think he's going for that commentary. I know I've read, books. I think read even letters of Tolkien's that say Sam is kind of a love letter to the Batmen, I believe was the term, the lower class aides to aristocratic or upper class officers during World War I. Where what would have been and was a very unequal social status became something, a genuine camaraderie, a genuine recognition of the value of the virtue and strength of character of these people in the trenches. So Sam certainly plays that character, but then he comes back to the Shire at the end, and ultimately he's the mayor. Sorry, Zach, spoilers. I don't think that comes through in the movie. So Sam becomes effectively, he's almost himself adopted as Frodo's heir and is elevated very high. As far as the length of the episodes, I think I need to address that and probably think about that. And really, I'd like to request feedback on this. The reality is I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've been doing that for, the last 20 years. And I've gotten used to podcasts sort of being where I don't have a lot of time to sit and read books like I used to, but I can listen to podcasts, I can keep my brain working, and I can continue to learn about a lot of interesting things. So I listen to podcasts while I'm driving to and from, which I do a lot of as a parish priest, and then I do a lot while I'm walking and running, which I try to do a lot of as well, because otherwise, being a parish priest is just a whole lot of sitting or standing still. So for me, long-form podcasts, 4 or 5, God forbid, but I guess fine, 6 hours are a beautiful thing. I just turn it up to 1.5 speed because most of the time people speaking in real time don't speak as quickly as we can comprehend them speaking. And I just plow through and get through a bunch of content, and, that's fine. So my rotation is usually involving some Bible study podcasts and Lord of Spirits, a few different history podcasts over the years, and then a variety of others as I have time. So Sam's note makes me realize that basically I've been approaching this podcast as I'm going to make the podcast that I would want to listen to, and that might not be for everyone. So I'd appreciate some further feedback, dear listener. If you prefer we try to rein things in and refrain from any more 4 or 5 hour episodes, or if you'd prefer, maybe I thought about this, perhaps purposely breaking down and dividing up the single recording that we do each month and releasing it in segments. So maybe, 1 hour, 1.5 hours each, perhaps once a week, or once every 2 weeks. I don't know how the producers would like that, but I could see that being a possibility. I'm happy to try to make some adjustments if the length or the format is turning people away, because ultimately, I, as it turns out, I really love talking about these books. It's a pleasure to spend hours doing so with old friends and family, and the new friends I'm making along the way here. It doesn't really matter to me how I do it, so long as I have time to prep it. Anyway, Zach, I feel like I needed to say that, reflect on it a bit, invite feedback. But how about you? Any thoughts on the subject of long podcasts or Baldur's Gate or any of these other points that Sam raises here?
I appreciate that Sam is doing a playthrough of Baldur's Gate with a priest friend. It shows that all video games are for all people. Of course, I have not had the pleasure, possibly, of playing Baldur's Gate or any of its sequels. I mostly found it humorous just because he mentioned his priest in there, which is great. RPGs, while I was growing up, weren't really my thing. The older I'm getting, the more I'm finding that I enjoy them. So Baldur's Gate might have to go on the ever-growing list of entertainment to go into my eyeballs, right? As for long podcasts, I think it depends on the topic. While I'm not a parish priest, I'm also in my lay ministry. I'm frequently going places, so I'm always putting something on here and there, right? Or if I'm getting ready to go somewhere, I'll put something on. And usually I'll listen to parts of a podcast and then maybe move on to something else. But if the topic was something I was near and dear to me, I liked the speakers, I'm okay with it being, 4 or 5 hours, because that means if I have to break it up, then there's just something really nice that I have to come back to. So as to the points that he raises, it is interesting, because it kind of being in this liminal space between the movies and the books right now that I am. My conception of Merry and Pippin is still very much influenced by the movies, right?
Right.
Where their lineage is maybe mentioned. I don't even remember, which means it probably isn't.
It's almost entirely irrelevant to their character development.
Exactly, right. So, and there's not really much, if any, lip service paid to Tolkien's intention of honoring those that served the aristocratic class. But I like that by the end of the story, Sam, not in the sense of, oh, good for him, he became an aristocrat, but more so his actions. And while you were saying it, I thought of this. Gandalf picks Bilbo to be the burglar in The Hobbit. This unassuming, and of course I'm coming at this as an American, but this unassuming person who has some connections to the Tooks and those that are famous within the Shire, but he still is like, nah, I'm just kind of enjoying my life here, right? And then Gandalf apparently has an eye for those that will make great adventurers. And so he's able to pick Sam as well. And I thought that was a kind of a cool connection there. But yeah, it is interesting to read these and see the differences as I go through.
And I think we're going to be talking a lot more about that as we go, because, when we first talked, you'd been through really just the introductory chapters, barely gotten out of the Shire. And, we talked a lot about the introduction of the Black Riders and how that plays out, because that's probably the largest and most substantial distinction in the early minutes of the film.
Yes.
Apart from the fact that we get the voiceover from Galadriel and the big cinematic lore dump on the history. But moving forward from there, they diverge drastically. So
yes.
I'm looking. We'll get to that in a bit. So anyway, Sam, thank you for writing so frequently. Please continue. It's nice to have your voice finally on the podcast. So our second note comes from listener Jordan, and actually this is cool because now we're in this episode we're 2 for 2. I've met both of these listeners in person. Jordan weighs in on a subject that I've realized over the past 6 months or so is surprisingly near and dear to me. I'll read this, Zach, so you can respond first, because this is something I'm sure you've heard about, but also new to you. So, Jordan, his subject is, let's never stop talking about Tom Bombadil. So he says, Father Anthony and guest. Like most Amon Sûl listeners and guests, I reread The Lord of the Rings every year or so. On my last few read-throughs, I've started to develop a new view of Tom Bombadil that's influenced by my recent interest in the Desert Fathers and Christian mysticism. I'm far from an expert in either Tolkien or theology, so I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on this Bombadil theory. Our first reaction to Tom seems to always be, wow, this guy is incredibly powerful. He's master of the forest, the ring has no power over him, and he seems to even have power over the ring. He could be the most powerful and ancient being we encounter in Lord of the Rings. We spend a lot of time speculating about who or what Tom is, but maybe we should be asking from where he derives his power, or asking if power is even the right word to describe Tom's mastery. If we handed someone a $100 bill and they had no interest in it, our first assumption might be that they have so much money that $100 doesn't interest them. But another exclamation could be that the person has completely rejected the idea of money. Could the same be said of Tom and power? Maybe it's not the case that Tom has more power than the ring offers, but that he has thoroughly rejected his desire for power. Are we wrong when we think about Tom as incredibly powerful? Should we be thinking of him instead as a fully enlightened being? Stretching the metaphor further, the rich man who is disinterested by $100 has not mastered money, he's merely collected a lot of it. There is still presumably some amount of money that would get the man's interest, or get his attention. The man who has rejected money entirely could actually be said to have mastered it. If there's one thing we know about Tom, it is that he is master, but we never see him exert his mastery through force, only through love and compassion. He is stern, but never violent. He does not seem to project his will onto anyone or anything. He is rather a helper and a steward. I would not describe Tom as monk-like or an ascetic, but maybe some kind of enlightened holy man who has completely risen above power and greed and fear. He seems to be filled with a bliss that is only seen on earth in those who have achieved union with God. I like to believe that Tom Bombadil is completely powerless and is truly living in the hands of Iluvatar. It's easy to find moral and ethical parallels between Tolkien's Christianity and his legendarium. Could Bombadil be Tolkien exploring some of the spiritual and mystical aspects of his religion? Love the show, and hopefully I will see you again next time I'm visiting family. Jordan. Okay, so I don't think have listened to all or many of my, as it turns out, I'm a little bit fixated, Zach, on this idea of who might Tom Bombadil be. So I'm not going to say anything here. What do you think of this idea?
I will join myself with your fixation, because as I was reading this, of course, the first thing that really pops out is, oh, Tom Bombadil isn't in the movies, right? And so as I go down the rabbit hole, I probably found a similar theory to what Jordan is talking about here. And I like his connection to this, or his conception of Tom kind of being passionless, right? As we would say in Orthodox theology, he's mastered the passions, as it were. Probably this is mostly seen in that he's fairly disinterested, if not completely, in the ring when he sees it. I think also a possible relation to Iluvatar is Tolkien kind of, in my opinion, gives it away pretty evidently when the hobbits ask Goldberry, who is Tom Bombadil? And she just goes, he is, period. And of course, any astute reader of Scripture or hearer of Scripture will notice that is essentially what Christ says to the apostles when they ask him who he is. He goes, I am that I am, yeah. Right? Or what Moses hears out of the burning bush when he's talking with God. So I like that was, at least in my opinion, a very clear
Mm.
reference to Tolkien's Christianity or Catholicism. But yeah, there's a lot there to suggest that I think there's a pretty good connection to Tom being something akin to an aesthetic in a way.
Yeah, as far as the thought about the he is, Zach, welcome to the party. People have been speculating on that and fixating on that for a long while. I was actually convinced on this read through that we shouldn't read it as he is, but almost as more of a childish, who is Tom Bombadil? He is. He is Tom Bombadil, right? Which is also interesting, but it kind of brings us back to the same kind of thing that Jordan and you were also reflecting on, that idea of, a renunciation of power that delivers one from bondage to power.
Right.
And, honestly, for myself, Jordan, I think you put better than I can what I'm convinced is at the core of Tom Bombadil. I still like the idea that there may be some other connections, not to Eru Iluvatar himself, but perhaps to some others who have had power and then have renounced it. But that's unnecessary. I think we can get all the mileage that we need, and can understand Tolkien's point simply by recognizing what Jordan has stated so clearly. Whatever, whoever Tom Bombadil is, wherever he's from, he is one who has renounced force, dominion, power, coercion, mastery of anyone else, and therefore he is simply himself, and therefore he is master of himself by having renounced mastery. It's beautiful, it's poetic, it's deeply Christian, and beautiful. So yeah, I've gone down this rabbit hole a lot. I'm not going to say anymore. But yes, Jordan beautifully said. I wish I'd written it that well. So we have one more note that we're going to read today. As you all know, we've been soliciting your submissions of landscapes that resemble Weathertop since I took over, and we have a neat and growing portfolio. Now, the brilliant folks in production have now created an animated opening for the YouTube version that features several of these, but I want to start taking the time to show off some of these landscapes in this listener questions and comments section, because often they come along with notes that are beautiful and we haven't been reading those. So this month, we have a submission from listener David Kopazzi. I hope I'm saying that right. And it's depicting humpback rocks in Virginia during the winter. Zach, would you read this while I show the photo?
Of course. Dear Father Anthony, my wife discovered your podcast this past year, and we have enjoyed catching up to you and the rest of the fellowship as we make our way to Bree. I've been a fan of Tolkien for 50 years, and as a not-so-tall hobbit, I do aspire to elvishness. My favorite part of the trilogy is meeting Strider at the Prancing Pony in Bree. After 25 years of marriage, my wife finally succumbed to reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy out loud to me and using various voices for each character. Attached is a photograph that I took back in January 2025 of humpback rocks as seen from the snow-covered Blue Ridge Parkway, Central Virginia near the Appalachian Trail. It does remind me of a wintry Amon Sûl. What do you think? I usually climb up to the rocks at least once a year. If you look really hard from the top on a clear day, you can almost see along the east-west road as far as Last Bridge. Thank you for the fellowship of your podcast. We have enjoyed all of the guests, and you are doing a great job as host. In Christ, David Kofazi. I apologize if I mispronounced that, David.
So thank you so much, David, for sending this in. Thank you for your lovely words. I actually, I'm going to show this again. I love this image, and I love what you described, David, about being able to stand up at the top, because of course you're depicting this, you take the photo from down at the bottom, but being able to stand at the top and see the whole vista spread out beneath you, that that sense of reaching a high vantage point and being able to see the world like a carpet spread beneath you is one of those things Tolkien describes so well. One of the things that drew me into his books from the very beginning. And not to pick on Zach's favorite movie, but one of the things that I was most disappointed about in the movies that Amon Sûl is just this little, bloop, more of a knob or a hillock, or just than an actual tall hill. But anyway, that's for later. We'll get to that, I know. For everyone else, please feel free to join in with us. If you live or work or commute under the shadow of Amon Sûl, please share a photo with us. And if you're stuck living in Kansas or southern Michigan or northern Ohio, you can do a diorama. Just put a camera on the ground and make some hills of dirt and put some, cauliflower in it. And, hey, presto, Amon Sûl. So anyway, and anything else you'd want to add about that, Zach?
You're always welcome to crap on one of my favorite movies. I'll leave this for later, but I've revisited one or two of the Hobbit films since, and my opinion of them has actually grown. Yes,
really, really,
yeah. But we can get into that later because
go ahead.
I don't want you to kick me off the podcast.
I will kick you off. I mean, I watched a documentary about the making of that actually was really sad because apparently, I maybe you even recommended it to me, but describing how the making of that movie really was tremendously damaging and everything that went along with it to the New Zealand film industry and everything. But the high hopes and the enthusiasm that were present for the cast and the crew and everybody at the beginning of that and how it just fell apart it's a sad story.
Yeah. We can save that for later if you wish. But yes, I might have recommended it to you because what was interesting was I was like, okay, so the Lord of the Rings movies are this good. The Hobbit has everything that they had, right? It was my thought process. So what happened? And I didn't know until about a month ago, give or take, that they switched directors.
Yeah.
Almost essentially like day of, which is, I can't remember if I told your listeners this last time, but my undergraduate degree was in film studies, and I had grand aspirations of moving to Hollywood and writing films and whatnot. And the more documentaries I see and the more things I read, the more I'm okay with the fact that I do not do that type of work.
Yes.
Because hearing Peter Jackson say that he was afforded however much prep time for Lord of the Rings, I want to say it was about 2 years. He had pre-production going, and he was afforded essentially zero time. And I believe the words he used is, I was essentially making it up as I went along. And I'm like, that is an absolutely insane way to make a movie that is as expensive as The Hobbit, as expanded as The Hobbit, and as, to the fans, as important as The Hobbit, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they turned out watchable at all, if Peter Jackson perchance is listening, hat tip to you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the photo that you posted was gorgeous. In your description of Amon Sûl in the movie kind of just being a knob makes sense, right? And actually, what it made me think of was in Brookline, Massachusetts, near the Holy Cross Seminary. If you go along one of the roads, there's a massive hill. Mm-hmm. I believe the park is Lars Anderson. Mm-hmm. And near the top of Lars Anderson, there's almost a little banister and then a step. And now that you mention it, I'm like, oh, that kind of reminds me of.
Actually, I remember Lars Anderson Park, and or if that's the one. And yes, if anyone is listening in Boston, please submit a photo of that hill because it's an impressive sight.
Yes, I used to walk up and down that hill for exercise at school, and there was one time where a gentleman who must have been training for the past Winter Olympics ran by me on his skis, and he was going much faster than me, and I was very anyways, I think one of the things I enjoy the most about engaging with Tolkien's work is his clear influence from nature, and to be very orthodox about creation in general.
Yeah,
and the beauty that God has brought for us, right?
Yeah, there's a love for the good creation,
Yes.
and acknowledgement that it's marred and troubled and broken, and yet that deep love for the goodness of the creation is so prevalent in Tolkien's works.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I caught that this time actually during the Tom Bombadil section, but I'll save that for a little bit later.
Sure. Yeah. As far as the Hobbit movies, and maybe we will, hit that later. I am curious. I know there are people who've done fan edits, fan cuts of those movies, and I've not taken the time to watch them, but it's something I'd like to do, because there's a lot. I could see it being sort of like, okay, we've got a ton of material. Let's trim off the fat and leave what's actually good. So, at any rate. So thank you all. That's all we've got for questions and comments and sideline discussions today. But do feel free to send more in to us at Amon Sûl at ancientfaith.com, or you can message us on the Facebook page, or you can send in comments. You just write comments on the YouTube videos, and you might hear what you had to say on an episode to come. So, this brings us to the main portion of our episode today. We've brought Zach back to the podcast to talk about the whole sweep of the story, from Brandywine Ferry to the Ford of the Bruinen. And actually, I did something for the title that's probably not going to show up anywhere, because this is odd. If you're trying to break down what are the major points in each of these chapters, there's a bit of a theme that develops. Brandywine, Bombadil, Barrow-wights, Bree, and Bruinen. It's like Tolkien
I didn't catch that.
It's like Tolkien had bees for breakfast. Now, of course, then between Bee and Bruin, you've got Strider, Luthien, Silmarils, Athelas, Glorfindel, Midges, and the pattern breaks down completely. But it's still kind of impressive. So that's what we're talking about in our big discussion today. Zach, your delay of your first read through of these chapters, so you've just read them in the last few weeks. Gives us a chance to get your hot take on what is my favorite book of all time, and other people agree with me. So, as a review, the last time we spoke, the hobbits had just received the basket of steaming mushrooms from Farmer Maggot, and they were standing on the edge of the Shire, about to take the next step, which would take Sam Gamgee further from home than he'd ever been before. And dear listener, if you've never done this, search Sam Gamgee furthest from home on YouTube, and you will find some utter madman who did a fan edit of the movies, so that every time Sam says, "This is the furthest I've ever been from home," well, they repeat that and put it in every time Sam takes a step, and it's a miserable way of watching the movies, but someone did a labor of love. Anyway, that's where we left them, on the edge of the Shire, just about to cross the Brandywine Bridge. Since then, a conspiracy has been unmasked. They've traveled through the old forest and been caught by Old Man Willow. They've been rescued by Tom Bombadil and met the fair Goldberry. They've been captured by the Barrow-wight and rescued once again by Tom. They've dined and drunk and disappeared in Bree. Frodo's made a spectacle of himself. They've met Strider. They've escaped Black Riders overnight in Bree. They've traversed the Chetwood and the Midgewater marshes. They've climbed Weathertop. They've heard Aragorn sing about Luthien, and they've met Black Riders in battle. Frodo got stabbed. They've traversed the wilds of ruined Arnor. They found Bilbo's trolls. They met Glorfindel, and they barely escaped the Black Riders on the very border of Rivendell. There's no way we're going to discuss all of that, but Zach, we can ask you what parts of the story were most striking to you, what your takeaway was, just from the read-through.
Yeah.
What do you got for us?
For all of that, it's been a no pun intended. It has been a wild ride, going through those sections, what struck me the most were the stop and the starts. At all of the B places, you have a stop and a start. It follows a very strict pattern, as it were. I'm going to sound like a broken record throughout this, and I do apologize to the listeners, but a lot of this reading, of course, is the movie. I've got the movie playing in my head, but then I've got the book also playing out in my head in real time. So it's becoming this new thing as I traverse. So Frodo's actions in the Prancing Pony very much stuck out to me. This idea, or excuse me, the book version of Strider of Aragorn. This might come across as funny. I don't necessarily mean it to, but the flight to the Ford in the film, of course, it's about that long, but in the books, it's almost 3 weeks. If I read that really. And then the appearance of Glorfindel actually was very striking to me. I knew that he was going to be there. A friend from seminary had told me about him years ago. And so I was excited to see, who is this elf, right? He's kind of got this mysterious air to him, whatnot. And of course, it's not Arwen who's doing the rescuing. And then Glorfindel does show up, and I'm like, oh, wow, you might as well be describing an angel or some other majestic being. But those were the initial, and how could I forget? Tom Bombadil. How can you not get struck by Tom Bombadil, right? Especially as a moviegoer. One of my dear friends that I was talking about this with over the last year was, those movies are pretty great, but there's no Tom Bombadil. And he would say that over and over again. And I finally when I got there, I was like, finally, I can figure out who Josh has been talking about. This Tom Bombadil character.
And did you figure it out, who he is?
I don't think anyone's going to figure out who he is. But yeah, those were the ones that were initially the ones where I kind of took pause and went, oh, that's really interesting. That stuck out on the first go. And I believe, like many of your listeners, these will be books that I begin rereading yearly. The experience has just been magical, but yeah, those were the ones I honed in on.
Yeah, and I think that's what I expected. Those major changes are really striking. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit, because this was not planned. This was just a beautiful coincidence. But I figured we were going to talk about the differences from between the movies and the books. And please don't apologize for that, because you speak for a whole massive segment of the Tolkien world, if you will, whose experience with this plot, with this story, is primarily, or at least in terms of timing, and perhaps just there are a great many people for whom, like you, the narrative of Lord of the Rings is Peter Jackson's narrative, and so getting the chance to watch that interaction between the two versions of the story develop and interact and sort of bubble in your mind and thinking in real time is really a privilege. So
yeah, I'm happy you put it that way, because it is a privilege, right? It is the cinematic translation of one of the most beloved works in. Am I being hyperbolic if I say human history?
It is. I don't think so. We'll see how it develops, but it's.
Yeah, it's hard to think of many books, worlds, as it were, lore, that have had a larger impact on literature than this. Most certainly within the last 150 years, 200 maybe. I'll leave it up to the Tolkien scholars to make that case for me more so. So the films being notable in the pop culture, as it were, makes a lot of sense. It's, it must have been a big deal, right? I was only 6 when the first one came out, which I believe was December of 2001. So I don't think I didn't see all 3 of them in succession, because my young uh, my young millennial ADD brain was mostly fixated on the action sequences, which I still think are very well done.
Mhm.
But anyways, so I didn't see the movies as a whole, or I most certainly didn't watch them as I do now until I was probably 10, 11, give or
Right.
take. So it has been quite the experience to have the mental image morph as almost more details are filled in.
Sure.
I don't want to say it's like having an incomplete painting
Mm.
with the details added back in, because I think that Jackson does such a nice job of so many different things. And of course, his crew and cast need to be commended as well.
Mm.
But almost having the world reopened to
Mhm.
me, and having details not filled in but kind of rush in to their proper place is really this cool thing.
Sure. I wonder, would you be able to affirm a description of like an added dimensionality to it? Like, Jackson's image, although it's visual, although it's got, the, maybe they even, showed them in 3D. I don't remember, but,
Mhm.
it's a visual image plus the music,
Mhm.
plus the dialogue and the acting. It's this whole
Mhm.
multimedia experience, and yet it's still, it's quick. It's kind of
Yes.
flat. And then I could imagine as you read the books, you see, okay, there's a whole mood, there's a whole sense, there's a whole feel that like this set piece, this image, this picture, this musical motif is trying to convey in a really intense and distilled way. But now I'm getting where that came from
Yeah.
in a lot more in 3D, in color, with the
Mhm.
emote anyway.
Of course. I admit that I don't like 3D movies that much. They kind of give me motion sickness.
Yeah,
Um, Perhaps maybe I'm just not trying hard enough. But anyways, um,
it seems like a
it's
gimmick to me.
considering it was created as one, you're not far off.
Yeah.
But I could go on a tangent, but I'll spare us. It's yes, your description of the movies is quick. And maybe I won't get ahead of myself, but one of the nice things about doing the podcast right now is um, the films were just recently re-released in theaters
Mhm.
for their 25th anniversary, or at least the 25th anniversary of Fellowship.
Yeah.
And as it was pre-Lent, before things got really crazy, I was able to carve out some time to go see Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers.
Mhm.
I had plans to go see Return of the King, and then I bought my ticket and everything, and then day of,
Mm.
I adore this movie, but I can't afford the 4 hours I'm going to be sitting, which normally I don't have a problem with, but unfortunately that day the real world called, or as the kids say, adulting.
Mhm.
But anyways, it was a moving experience in a way
Mhm.
to see these on the big screen, because you get to turn your phone off and kind of get swept up in the whole thing.
Yeah.
And in 2024, Dune Part 2 had come out, and I
Mhm.
watched that. And when I watched it, I remarked to a friend, I kind of get how people that liked the Jackson movies would have felt.
Mhm.
Well, you know,
Then you got to see.
2 years later, I'm like, oh boy, now I get to be, I get to take in this experience as well. And, it was moving, it was wonderful. And it was actually what spurred me on to pick up my delayed read for Amon Sûl.
And we didn't plan this. I didn't know that. I mean, I realized I'd noticed vaguely that they had been out, but I was too busy to do anything with it. So bringing you back on, and you said, actually, I was just reaching out to you when you texted me and said, I just got to saw it. I thought, okay, well, this is perfect.
Yeah, I'm
Just got to
I'm
see.
a little bummed I didn't get to finish out the trilogy, but I mean, I have a hard time thinking they won't do something similar to this. I doubt this was the first time they re-released them in theaters, and I believe it ended up actually making them a little bit of money. So,
of course it did.
yeah, right.
So.
But what was cool about watching them this time was I read a little bit of the books, and I talked a lot with friends and about them, and done a lot of reading. So I knew a little bit more about the world going in. And what I noticed was the movies kind of hint that there are deeper things going on.
Yeah.
And the example that I used with my friend that I went to go see Fellowship with was the sequence where Galadriel's giving the gifts out to the members of the Fellowship. And one of the, how do I say this? One of the prominent criticisms I've read online and heard from others about the films is how they change Gimli. My understanding, because I've only briefly met him now, I'm at the Council of Elrond part in the book, is that Gimli is actually this very erudite, well-spoken, almost unique amongst the dwarves in that he's resistant to greed or materialism. And the movies...
He's a gallant. He's like a knight. He's like the soul of chivalry, in a sense.
And in the movie, he's not that. Like, almost at all. He's, I hold the movie version dear, of course. I find him humorous, even now as I get older. But what I found cool about that scene was he becomes Gimli from the books in that scene as he talks to Galadriel. I had, of course, heard and read and was like, all right, now, my antenna were up, as it were. And as I'm watching that scene, I picked up on the fact that he is the only one of the Fellowship that makes Galadriel laugh. He's charming. Even in his, he's almost embarrassed to ask her for her hair. And of course, the lore behind that was cool to read about too, that she had denied the hair to
Feanor.
Right, exactly. Forgive me, I've forgotten. Right.
I took a minor in F names in Tolkien.
So I realized, like, Galadriel's been around a long time, and she's seemingly a very serious person. And she had just gone through the test with the ring. She's a scary person when she wants to be, and she's a powerful person. And here comes this little dwarf who is able to make her laugh. And if I'm not mistaken, the line is pulled right from the book or something very similar. And Gimli in that moment becomes Gimli from the books. And so Tolkien, Jackson knew, he's like, I can't do everything. Yeah. But I can kind of tease out certain things that the book readers will recognize. And of course, he's taken lines from here and put them over here so that, in a way, the essence of Tolkien is still there. Yeah. And that was something I picked up on this time even more so, which was cool.
Right. And readers, he's able to almost get away with a certain ambiguity. He can make Merry and Pippin maybe somewhat, but especially, Gimli, I think, is a good example. He can make Gimli be kind of comedy, the comic character, the short, hairy, grumpy Scottish, warrior dude, but also he knows that the readers will already be expecting and seeing Gimli as he is in the book. And he just give a couple nods in the direction of that to strengthen and help that, so he can kind of have his cake and eat it too, to at least some degree. I just today watched through the sequence from Bree to the Bruinen, which didn't take me long in the movies, in the extended version, just so that I'm familiar with everything again, because it's been a while since I've watched them, and it was interesting to see it, especially in the extended version. Some of those, just the stuff that's I think there was a lot that was extended in that sequence. The Aragorn singing the Luthien poem, I'm sure is not in the theater version.
It was
some of those other things, which gives a little bit more of the insight there. So anyway, I'm really grateful that this coincided this way, so we can talk about it when it's fresh in your memory. Yeah. So with all that in general, Zach, I mean, this is really perfect timing, and I had identified kind of the same points as you moving through. So I think let's just start to run through and talk about those those different elements that that the Jackson films omitted,
Of
and
course.
how those struck you just in general as your first time
Mhm.
encountering them, and how they interact with the movie, and we'll just
Mhm.
have a fun conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
I didn't really mention the Crickhollow sequence, the bath song and so forth,
Mhm.
which is completely skipped over. They basically are chased in the movies, from their brief encounter with the elves to the gates of Bree, and we're off to the races.
Mhm.
Yeah, but anything you thought worth mentioning there?
Um, Looking at the so in my in my screenwriting class in college, my professor pointed out four rules, and I'll have to apologize to him that I only really remember one. And I believe it was the number one rule, which was, can it be shorter? And so I understand why Jackson took out what he did from that sequence, from essentially Bilbo's disappearing, using the ring to disappear, and then leaving it behind to Bree, because in the books, I believe, how much time passes? 3 decades, maybe.
17 years.
Yeah, it's something very notable. Whereas in the films, Gandalf rides to Minas Tirith and back, it seemingly in the span of maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's hard to tell from the way the movies are edited. But anyways, so I think given the and this is usually I will say this as a criticism, but in this case I will not.
Mhm.
The repetitive nature of the journey out of the Shire to Bree, or I'll use Rivendell as our endpoint. The stop and the start, the hobbits go, they get into danger, they find a place that is friendly to them where they rest and recuperate, and they go off again. I get why Jackson cut that down.
Sure.
You had mentioned earlier that the movies are quick. They've got this great pacing to them. So even though the extended editions are all, if not 4 hours, close to it, they usually don't feel like it. You kind of get this good, satisfactory sense of being in one place for the proper amount of time.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So reading it in the books, I'd remarked to a friend who's a big Tolkien fan, and I'm kind of, as with you, I'm kind of texting him as I read through, like, oh, this was cool. Oh, I've noticed this. And I said to him, man, like, this is kind of dragging for me, because I'm used to the movies, like, oh,
Right.
we're moving, they're getting chased by the Black Riders and they got to be on the road and whatnot. But here, there's a very slow pacing to it. And I asked my friend, I was like, what is he doing? What is Tolkien trying to do? Because I mean, he wrote this book over however many years, right? Most certainly longer than 10. And so when you do that, like, not much is an accident,
Mm.
right? They're very, very much arranged in a proper order on purpose. And I laughed at my friend's remark. He said, trust me, the longer you go in the books, the more you're going to be wanting the comfort of those first early chapters. And now that I'm out of them, as it were, I get what he's saying, because now the pace is really picked up.
Yeah.
At the Council of Elrond, they're telling a lot of the history of the ring, and it's like, oh, this is a big deal. Like, now the real adventure starts. A note that I made about the stops and the starts is that possibly, of course, The Hobbit was written as a children's book, right? Your listeners, of course, would know that, or will know that. I kind of thought about these stops and starts as Tolkien almost moving out of that mode of storytelling into one that's a little more serious or adult, which we can get to later, because that's actually one of my defenses of the Hobbit movies. But
Okay.
anyway, I can move that. We'll move that to later. So it's Tolkien, like, yes, this is what, if you've read The Hobbit, which I believe it was popular at its time of publication, the long expected party, the finding of the ring, or the passing of the ring to Frodo, and then the movement out of the Shire would have been maybe his own way of dealing with, I'm telling a different type of story now, and my readers are reading a different type of story.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the run-ins that they have along, with the Old Forest, with Old Man Willow, with Tom Bombadil, and the Barrow-wight are not unlike it. If those had been picked up and put in The Hobbit, I probably wouldn't notice it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if, the opening sequence, as it were, with the dwarves coming to Bilbo's house was dropped in the back half of Lord of the Rings, I would notice it.
Yes.
It's a very different type of storytelling.
It doesn't fit.
Not at all, because Tolkien, of course, has shifted how he's telling his story. So that really stuck out.
And what's neat is you're intuiting something that is absolutely part and parcel of how the books were composed, because Tolkien did not begin writing with a clear sense of where this was going. He began writing just to try his hand at a sequel to The Hobbit. And it effectively, as he wrote, more and more elements of the Silmarillion backdrop came into it. The Black Riders sort of appeared out of nowhere. He didn't know where they came from. Strider appeared out of nowhere. He didn't know where he came from.
Really?
It's just stuff that kind of came to him as he was writing. And then he was like, okay, we need to go back, because this was Tolkien's method. Something showed up, and he would treat it as though it were a found document in an archive, in an ancient manuscript, and he'd or in an ancient mythology, and he'd try to fit everything else around it. So he wrote and rewrote around these different elements.
That's fascinating.
So I mean, you'll actually really enjoy when you get to the podcast episodes prior to this one, because we go into a lot of that, the whole composition record. Because the thing that makes Tolkien cool, is that, I don't know another author for whom we have the entire manuscripts effectively of his composition. And this is, volume 2 of the 3-volume History of Middle Earth, collected, which basically is the Lord of the Rings stuff. So we can see how he went about writing it. But effectively, it is exactly that. The other thing I'll say, though, for why the stop and start, besides the fact that why did he keep it that way? Because he could have gone back, killed his darlings, and done a much more efficient story. But I think two reasons. I've read these books to my children over the years, and the stop and start allows even the terror, even the tension, even the lofty high, adult material of it. It allows them to access it. So functionally, these books train young readers to be able to deal with, larger concepts. My 7-year-old is all over this story right now, because there's scary bits, but it's not giving her nightmares. She has, and Tolkien, he's very deft with the scary stuff.
Yes.
If I do the voices too well, then she's scared of my voice. But but the other thing, why the stop and start? This is what I thought as you were saying it, because I was really struck, because I was driving as I'm playing the movie. I'm not watching it. I'm just listening to and remembering. And of course, that means that Howard Shore's score comes through all that much more. And at the Weathertop sequence, the way that the attack of the Nazgul, of the Ringwraiths goes, that there's a repetitive motif that is, it's the same thing on a loop, but it's building in tension, it's building in its bombastic, it's building in terror. The stop and start is doing that too, right? Okay. And it's on a longer time frame than a movie has to work with, but it is it's a fundamentally musical thing. It's a theme and a repetition cool. that's increasing in tension, increasing, the stakes are increasing, our knowledge is understanding. Our knowledge and understanding are increasing, heightening as it goes. And it does the same thing without the special effects. It makes just the language itself and the human imagination. and the sound, especially of the spoken word, because it's best if you read it aloud. It makes it function as really the only special effect. Which I think we talked about the first time that we were discussing this. Tolkien, his writing has a cinematic character because he's really accessing that oral tradition, stories told around a campfire and told and retold with a rhythm and a melody and a meter to the words themselves. Anyway.
No, that's great. I'm glad you said that. There are two things I wanted to touch on that you just jogged my memory with. The first one, as it relates to the music, I'm very glad you said that, because for as many times as I've seen those films, I didn't pick up on that, right? But as soon as you said it and framed it that way, the music started playing in my head. And also, that is a age old, pretty much from the first sound pictures. Even before that, because for those that don't know, the first sound that was played on the film reel itself, they're called talkies. Those come about in 1920. I want to say The Jazz Singer was 27, which wasn't the first full sound film, but it was the first one where sound was present. But anyways, before that, for silent pictures, when you go to the theater to see it, you would have a band sitting below the screen playing music for the movie. But anyways, that is not unlike Jaws and theme of Jaws. Spielberg famously had problems getting the shark to work. There's a good documentary where he talks about it. He's like, I was this arrogant little kid who was like, I'm going to go shoot a picture on the sea, not realizing that that's a big pain in the butt. But what did we get out of it? We got John Williams' brilliant score, which almost negated the necessity to see the shark on the screen. Right? But anyway, so that made me think of it. And then this idea of building intention, right, is the first time in the book that we see, quote unquote, the Black Riders. You're like, okay, I know there's a danger to these guys, but they're kind of far off. Our heroes are doing a very good job of outpacing them. We don't, it's not really conveyed what they are. They're just kind of there, right?
Yeah.
But then,
behold a dark and sinister man.
Yes, right.
Boring, cold, whatever.
Right. But then they get to Weathertop, and it's like, oh wow, these are ancient evil.
Yeah.
Manifest. And this might be a tangent, but I wrote this down in my notes the other day that I wanted to ask about. My understanding is that if the Nazgul were to remove their hoods, as it were, you wouldn't see anything. They would be invisible to the naked eye. And of course, when Frodo puts the ring on, he sees them in white. Did Tolkien in his notes explain why that was? My guess was that when Sauron took them over, because of course the bearers of the Nine Rings of Men that were overtaken by him, that he almost stole their life essence from them. That was my guess, but I did want to ask you about that because I noticed that while I was reading.
Yeah, are they described actually as certainly Jackson depicts them as white. I'm trying to I remember, are they pale or are they did you notice how long that sequence is in the books? The actual encounter with the Nazgul?
Yes. Let's see. He was able to see beneath their black wrappings. There were 5 tall figures, 2 standing on the lip of the dell, 3 advancing.
Right. White faces.
Burned keen and merciless eyes. Upon their gray hairs were helms of silver. In their haggard hands were swords of steel. There's your cinematic writing as you were talking about, of course. So, I think it's very interesting that they can only be seen again when the ring is put on.
Right, because he is now in the Wraith world. Their faces are described as white, and in the next chapter he describes, he says, "Where is the pale king?" So I don't know if, again, they're like brilliant, blinding white in the movie. My sense is more they're pale, like lifeless. in the sense, their skin doesn't have any flesh to it.
Yeah.
Is the sense.
The if you or any of your listeners have ever watched The Twilight Zone, there's an old episode, I can't remember what it's called, but there's an episode with masks in it where these people are told to put on masks by their dying relative, and they can only take them off at the end of the party, and they're these hideous things. The Nazgul in the movie, when Frodo puts the ring on, their faces look a little like those masks, a little bit distorted, kind of not what I would like to see in a dream or standing.
No.
So I think Jackson does a really good job of embracing his horror roots and using that to convey these are not people I want to spend time with or I feel comfortable around, right? But yeah, just a quick tangent about the Nazgul.
Right, and we'll get to that again.
Sure.
Before we go on, what are your thoughts? I mean, we touched on it a little bit with Jordan's note in the listener comments, but the Old Forest, Tom Bombadil, the Barrow-wight, again, all stuff that's completely omitted. What's your takeaway? Your first encounter with Tom Bombadil?
What was really interesting about Tom, I'm looking at my notes here, is that he's got this air of mystery to him. In the initial chapters of the story, there's a lot of exposition. It's good exposition, and there's a lot of it. With Tom, though, it's just, here's Tom. There's no description of what his race is, which we know is important to Tolkien. Not in the maybe cultural sense of that we might be familiar with as Americans or elsewhere, but just that's a man, that's a dwarf, that's an elf, right? Sure. Just kind of, and there are certain behaviors that go with each of them, right? The elves are arrogant, the dwarves are a little more scrappy, I guess, and so on and so forth. But with Tom, there's just nothing. He's
clearly not an elf. He's
right.
You could call him a man, but he says he's eldest, so clearly not mortal.
Right.
He's kind of short, but doesn't act like a dwarf at all.
Right. Nor a hobbit.
No, certainly not.
Which is interesting, too. And so I wrote that he's seemingly unique in the Tolkien canon, in that there's really nobody like Tom Bombadil that I certainly can think of. And in the brief, interactions I've had with the Silmarillion and with friends and discussing lore. And I mean, I was drawn to him like I imagine a lot of other people are.
Yeah.
Looking back at my notes, I said, Tom, for the non-read Tolkien fan or someone who's new to it, he seems on my first go through to represent that which is pure and good in the world.
Yeah.
And there's a very distinct connection to nature in that as well. Tom, I mean, I get the sense of, hopefully this won't upset the listeners, but somebody that looks a little like how Radagast was portrayed in the Hobbit movies. Kind of just, he looks like he could have walked out of a tree, but doesn't belong to the tree, right? He's one with them, but maybe not. It's there are words for Tom Bombadil, but you won't have all the words for Tom Bombadil.
I like that sentence. Anybody else jump out to you in those three chapters? Old Forest, House of Tom Bombadil, and the Barrow-wight.
I will admit to the Barrow-wight chapter kind of just happening for me on this first go through. It was kind of just, Tom got them out of trouble. Okay, that's cool. I'm sure there's something missing in it that I'll appreciate it on another go around. But I did like the character of Goldberry. And I liked that character because you have this mysterious man pop out of the forest, and lo and behold, he's got a house. He's got a companion, a partner, most likely. And they seem, in a healthy way, I suppose, kind of disconnected from the encroaching troubles of the world. There's a sentiment that's constantly expressed that evil's creeping back into the world. At the Council of Elrond, Gandalf talks about, I went and defeated or worked with the council against the necromancer.
Yeah.
Tom and Goldberry seem to maybe be aware of it, but kind of like, like, that's all right. We're good over here type of thing. And that was just really interesting because you've got Frodo who's being compelled on his quest. He's got a horrible burden to bear. It may be as small to fit into his pocket, but it's something that he does not want at all, nor would myself or anybody with a lick of sense, of course, right?
Yes. And
Tom is completely just unaffected by it. He's like, whatever. It's the ring, but I'm good. It's amazing, right?
Yeah. And yet he warns Frodo about it too when he has it on, which is interesting. He's like, your hand is better without that.
Which is cool because I can't even though I did just reread The Hobbit, I can't really, like, even Smaug can't see Frodo or excuse me, Bilbo when he's wearing the ring. He can smell him, so he knows where he is, but he can't see him. That's another way that Tom stands out is he can see Frodo when he's wearing the ring.
Yeah.
So that would get back to the passionless part that Jordan was talking about. And then the last character that did jump out to me, I might be jumping ahead here, but Glorfindel at the flight to the fort.
Yeah. And in a sense, he functions in the same way because also, as Gandalf says in the next chapter, he exists in both worlds at once, in the seen and unseen world. But let's come back to Glorfindel in a bit. Okay. So I'm glad I'm glad you mentioned Goldberry. I hoped you would. Really very striking, unusual. How would you categorize, Goldberry?
You run into the same issues that you do with Tom. She's kind of like this. She's kind of like a regular, mortal female, but she's not really.
Yeah.
She might exhibit hobbit-like behaviors, but she's not a hobbit. The kind of living above it all sense that I get from some of the elves, you kind of get from them, but also not really. There's this liminal space that both of them are occupying.
Yeah. I really like Jordan's take on Tom Bombadil. I had years ago made a pitch to Father Andrew that he didn't take me up on. Wanting to do a discussion of Tom Bombadil and Goldberry as a type or an instantiation of a priesthood or a monastic space. In that, what I was going for at the time was kind of the sense that you and I think have both had in the home of a certain priest and presbytera who are beloved to us both.
Of course,
where we're there and it's safe and it's home and there's guidance and there's instruction and we're even being equipped for roles and paths. But we're the ones that have to go out and do it.
Correct.
And I think that sense of the role of the priest in general. The priest isn't running around living life for the faithful. The priest is celebrating the liturgy, giving counsel, giving guidance, providing tools perhaps, but the faithful are the ones who have to go out and live the Christian life in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think there's something of that. I have a lot of other thoughts about Tom and Goldberry, but I think that general sense holds. They're not unconcerned with the world. The vision that Tom gives them of Aragorn's ancestors, basically, through the ages, treading the ground and warding off evil, and the love and the esteem that he expresses about these, these men and their role. He's not unconcerned by the stuff of the world, and yet it's not his task to accomplish it.
Right.
And it's this really interesting, which gets back to what Jordan was saying. He's not exerting power over others. But
yeah,
yeah,
I will say again, it was very cool to finally meet the character that my one friend Josh had been
yammering about for decades.
Yeah, talking my ear off about, wait, they don't have Tom Bombadil in there. Man, it's a good movie, but they don't have Tom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who is this character, right? And now I get it.
Yeah.
Like this, and it's funny because it's just that one thing, right? Because Tom doesn't have a race attached to him, just that one little thing. And now the character completely changes. And it was a great time spending with Tom.
So here's a question, because you're a cinemaphile, if that's the way of saying it.
There are many names for it.
Sure, but I don't think we've talked about this. I would submit, at least for the sake of conversation, that there are some things that cannot be depicted on film.
Yes.
And I would say that, disappointed though I am on the one hand that Tom Bombadil and everything that he is and represents does not feature in Jackson's movies. There is no way that Jackson could have done it correctly. He would have had to resolve ambiguities that are intrinsic to the character to depict him. And it's striking to me to see, okay, this is a genuine, absolute limitation. What I would say it's an absolute limitation of the visual, media in general. You can't do it. That's my thesis, here for the sake of conversation. What's your thoughts on that?
One of to the point of ambiguity first. One of the things that I picked up on and discussed with professors while I was at school is that American audiences have a hard time with ambiguity and lack of closure. I don't think that's a fault. I think that's just how
it's just a thing.
Yeah, it's just the way that we do storytelling in the United States, especially from a cinematic perspective. There were numerous films that we would watch from around the world where the endings would come, you'd see the credits roll, and myself included, at least for the first go around, I'd be like, where's the rest of it? This part wasn't finished, that part wasn't finished. And then finally, by the third or fourth, new film that I'd watch, I was like, okay,
this is a thing. This is on purpose.
Yes. Different parts of this or that have to fill in that, or I have to get comfortable with the fact that there is no resolution that is depicted. So I think that the general way that Jackson, I'm going to keep doing that, approached making that movie was resolving ambiguities in the story quite frequently and right out of the gate. So in that sense, he most certainly couldn't have done Tom Bombadil. From a storytelling, screenwriting perspective, stopping for Tom would have probably ground the momentum to a halt.
Sure.
And also the whimsy of Tom doesn't neatly fit, in my opinion, into Jackson's vision of the movie or of the story. Jackson doesn't do the whole edgelord thing, thankfully. But he does pick up on parts of that, like, oh, this is cool, right? Or this is a little darker part of the story. I don't know where Tom would have fit into any of that. So all of this rambling to say, I understand why Tom is not in the movie.
Sure.
After reading his portion, I get why Tom is not in the movie. And I agree with you in the sense that there's some director out there with a cast member and with their crew that could depict Tom Bombadil properly in a visual medium. I don't think that it could work well in the story of Lord of the Rings as told in a film format. because and I don't think I would like to see the ambiguity taken out of Tom Bombadil, because in that sense he's unique again, in that there is still a mystery to him. Even after all these years, there is still a mystery to Tom Bombadil.
Sure. I could maybe agree with you that in theory there might be, in theory, lightning could strike, in the same place, 80 times or whatever it would need for everything that would have to be perfect to be perfect. But I guess what I'm saying is it's not just to retain ambiguity in the depiction of Tom, but it's to retain the specific and particular ambiguities for a director, for a writer, for director, writer, actor, visual artists, set people, to all retain the perfect acuity of understanding of Tolkien's vision and depiction of this. It would not be Tom Bombadil. And that's the thing. Whatever Tom Bombadil, whoever Tom Bombadil is, it sits within this nesting, there's this web of ambiguity and uncertainty, and yet hinting at what is the significance, what are the possibilities. And you get any one of those wrong, and you have something else. And that's what's really striking. Tom is so well depicted. Maybe even in is it too much to say there's an apophaticism about Tom?
No, it makes sense.
Yeah,
I get that. It's we have what is revealed to us, and we know there's more there, but it wasn't revealed to us.
Right. But what is revealed to us does define the parameters of what we can and can't think. And you adjust any of those, and you have a different character.
Yes, you're talking about somebody very different.
Which actually is a perfect segue to my biggest complaint about the movies, and that is Aragorn. The introduction of Strider. Let's move forward to the Bree sequence, because again, there we have a character is changed. Anyway, but never mind that. That's. I'm not here to criticize Jackson or what he does. I understand the reasons, but let's just. I want to hear your thinking, because there is so different. As I was driving, I was thinking, how does he even introduce Strider? He's sort of just, I don't remember. He's not there, and then he's there. And I watched him. Yep, that's exactly it. He's not there, and then he grabs Frodo by the scruff of the neck, and there he is. So how did this? How did the book strike you here for the first time, especially having so recently seen the movies on the big screen as they were meant to be seen?
So this was one that I was nervous, isn't the right word, but anticipating would probably be the word, because I knew that something was different. I knew that, and so on one hand, I've got Aragorn the movie, played by Viggo Mortensen, who I have enjoyed watching and rewatching and getting lost in the story of since I watched the movies the first time. Even beyond when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh, he's a really cool character. Look at all the great things he does, blah, blah, blah. Even after that, I was like, oh, he goes on his own little journey, right? He's, there's the drama with Arwen and so on and so forth. It was fascinating to see him in the books, because I think Jackson, from what I can tell, at first nailed the visual of Strider sitting in like the corner of the prancing pony. I kind of got this Ronin feel from him. He's like this lost samurai, even down to the fact that his blade is broken.
That's exactly right. Deacon Sarah from Roland was saying, he's a wretch. He's an outlaw, effectively.
Great way of putting it. What I found humorous was that you see him before the prancing pony. He hops over the fence, and then kind of like scurries into off page, as it were, and then he reveals himself. Oh, I was the one that jumped over the fence on our way in, and so this has struck me for all the characters. Honestly, is in the films, the characters are not nearly as verbose as they are in the books. I think I texted this to you while we were getting ready to film this. I was surprised to hear the Nazgul speak in complete sentences. And then Aragorn also is a little more talky in the books, which is great. And he's kind of reserved in the film, but that's not right. He seems more broody, as it were. And that seems like that's a big change from in the book. He's almost like begging Frodo to take him with him. It's I ask you of one price, and instead I join you on your quest. And Frodo and Sam and Merry Pippin are like, we don't even know who you are. Why are you asking to come with us? And in the movie, he just kind of is like, yeah, I'm in charge now. Yeah, you come with me. Right. So it was. I'll have to hear as you explain a little more, but I get why people, our book readers, are like, it's kind of not really the character we know. I get why they did that.
Sure.
Or why you say that, rather.
Well, it's a theme that I think we touched on when we were talking about the first few chapters. I certainly talked about it with a lot of the other guest hosts. There's a constant between Gandalf and Aragorn both, the extent to which they honor and defer to Frodo's free will and Frodo's stewardship of the ring. Frodo has to agree as the one who carries the ring. His will cannot be forced or compelled. And,
that's fascinating, actually.
And it's really vitally important. At least, Gandalf risks, the entirety of Middle Earth on Frodo's decision. He asks him, when will you leave? Right. He gives him advice, but he doesn't force him. And Aragorn, you're right. He is almost begging, and yet I would say he's pleading, in like a lawyer, talking to a jury. He's using every possible tool to win them over without being, false or on, he's being real, and yet, he's doing the St. Paul thing. He's being all things to all people, or trying all things to see what it is that Frodo needs. And yet in the course of it, we see that he is all of them at once. He is the outlaw. He is the rejected, despised, wanderer. He is the veiled king. He is the, he has the strength to be a brigand, although he's not. He is the lore master. He is the healer. He's all of these things at once. And he's a lonely man who would like to just be trusted for his own face because he's been rejected for his entire life. And the amount of self-revelation that Aragorn gives to Frodo is, in a certain sense, his turn to risk all on one toss. Because if Frodo won't go with him, then Middle-earth is lost. Aragorn knows this. Without Aragorn, Frodo has no chance on the road. The Black Riders will take him. And Aragorn knows he must not compel Frodo, because that would be to claim the ring for himself, which would also doom Middle-earth, right?
Yes.
So, everything hangs on one desperate chance that Frodo will trust this stranger who he has no reason to trust. And yet Aragorn, he's pleading, but he doesn't come across as desperate. He comes across as super intense, and yet supremely self-possessed throughout.
I hadn't considered that both Gandalf and Aragorn have to, no exception, have to defer to Frodo's free will with the ring. That did not occur to me, but as soon as you said it, it's like a big piece just clicked into place. Because any compulsion on their parts would open Frodo to the influence of the ring, which of course has a will of its own, and obviously negatively impact that. And that is definitely something that is removed from the movies, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There are, again, as with many other things in the movies, there's little nods to the idea. When they're struggling over I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, the Pass of Caradras.
Yeah.
And they're arguing, well, we're going to go to the Gap of Rohan. No, we're going to go to the Mines of Moria.
And they give Frodo the final decision. Yeah.
Yes. Gandalf says, let the ring bearer decide.
Yeah.
That might be one of those Jacksonian instances of throwing the book readers a bone, as it were. Yeah. Like I understand I had to cut parts of the book, so here's a little bit of it to, keep the pitchforks and torches away. I don't think the relationship between Jackson and the fans is as adversarial as other creators and adapters, but that's a completely other podcast. But yeah, that is definitely going to, in a positive way, color my further reading of the book. Watching them, because Gandalf at one point says, even the very wise cannot see all ends, but he can see quite a few of them. Yeah. And he shares that with Aragorn, either through words, I'm not positive, just because I haven't gotten there yet, or seen more of the depths of their relationship. But he has shared a lot with Aragorn by the time we meet Strider. Yeah. By the time that we meet him, he has had these interactions. I believe that they hunted Gollum together. Yeah. Is my understanding. So that would have meant they spent quite a bit of time together. Yeah. And this is mentioned in the movies. Is Aragorn one of the Dunedain in the books as well? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So that was preserved, and so that meant that he's been around for a while too, just like Gandalf has. Yeah. Aragorn is 80 some, maybe 90 years old. Yeah, he says that in I believe Two Towers. He mentions that. But anyways, so that is going to positively color my further reading of the book and see, okay, how is Tolkien commenting on free will and what we bear throughout our lives, especially crosses, or sins, passions, what have you. It's, I know that, one of the fundamental rules that, Jackson made for himself making the ring is that nobody can be shown to be immune to the ring. Like that was a fundamental rule, and that's why he made the change to Faramir, because otherwise it disrupts the terror and the visible intrinsic evil of the ring. But I think he chose the wrong absolute rule. Okay. Because that again, the problem is it's subtler, and can a filmmaker trust his audience to pick up on the subtler things when the audience needs to be a mass market action movie audience? Probably not. Yeah, especially at the 20th century too. Sure. I mean, I understand why he did it, but the correct, to my mind, the correct absolute rule is whoever possesses the ring must not be subjected to coercion. And playing that out and how that functions differently from no one can resist the draw of the ring, it makes a different story. It makes a story that's more like, more Tolkien's story. Excuse me. Well, if that was Jackson's rule, that nobody can be shown in the movie to be immune to the ring, that would be another reason why he couldn't feature our dear Tom Bombadil. Exactly. Yeah. So that makes a whole lot of sense. I think someone had mentioned that Faramir is very different in the books. I haven't met him yet. But I don't want to talk about it. Fair enough. I will say that I am looking forward. I will bring you back after you encounter Faramir, and we can talk about that. And then you can tell me how much you understand why everyone is livid. Okay. I will let you know. Yes. Oh well. So. Yeah. So, any other thoughts about Aragorn's introduction? The poem Gandalf's letter. Tell me what your thought about Gandalf's letter, because Gandalf's letter is completely absent, and to my mind is one of the more humorous examples of fictional epistolary literature in the canon. what was cool about reading this, right, is picking up on Tolkien's humor, because it's less, for lack of a better phrase, it's less in your face than Jackson's type of humor.
Yeah.
Which probably Jackson pulls from different sources for humor than Tolkien does.
Sure.
But I know I read Gandalf's letter. Let me go back and look at it so I can make sure I speak properly about
Well, here,
this.
how's this? What if I just read it? Because, we're having fun, and we haven't read any of this yet. So,
no, please do. Yeah.
Gandalf's letter. The Prancing Pony, Bree, Mid-Year's Day, Shire Year 1418. Dear Frodo, bad news has reached me here. I must go off at once. You had better leave Bag End soon and get out of the Shire before the end of July at latest. I will return as soon as I can, and I will follow you if I find that you are gone. Leave a message for me here if you pass through Bree. You can trust the landlord, Butterbur. You may meet a friend of mine on the road, a man, lean, dark, tall, by some called Strider. He knows our business and will help you. Make for Rivendell. There I hope we may meet again. If I do not come, Elrond will advise you. Yours in haste, Gandalf, with a rune. So far, this is just urgent and a little bit scary. P.S. Do not use it again, not for any reason whatever. Do not travel by night. Again, the Gandalf rune. P.P.S. Make sure that it is the real Strider. There are many strange men on the roads. His true name is Aragorn. Gandalf rune again, and then the poem. All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king. P.P.P.S. I hope Butterbur sends this promptly. A worthy man, but his memory is like a lumber room. Thing wanted, always buried. If he forgets, I shall roast him. Farewell, final, huge G rune.
Thank you for reading that. I had most likely laughed at that the first time I read it, but didn't go back and reread it. And now I understand. That's awesome. I think I'm going to start using that in my real life. If someone forgets something, I shall roast them. But yeah, there's all these just little character moments that are beautiful and awesome, because the color just kind of fills the idea in my head, right? The outline just starts to fill up again. And I love this idea of Gandalf, who is as close to an immortal being as you can get that's not an elf in Middle Earth, saying someone's memory is like a lumber room. Kind of like he's, like, why is he concerned with this? He's kind of beneath him. But yeah, to that note, though, not the letter, but just these, like, the poem is in there. One thing that I've noticed this time is Tolkien's use of songs. Mm-hmm. Of course, its own giant topic, but it's been kind of fun, maybe kind of setting them to my own personal meter and reading through them, and seeing how Tolkien dispenses lore through them, and really fills out the world. And I think that letter and more so the poem contained therein is a really good example of that.
Yeah, we actually did an episode on the poetry of the Lord of the Rings. It was the episode after. Well, the episode after yours was in April, and it was for Pascha, and I just did a panel. I brought in 5 people to talk about Paschal imagery. Mm-hmm. But in May, we brought Richard Barrett on. I think you probably know Richard, because he was in Boston same time you were. He's a church musician. And we were talking about the music, the poetry in the Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. It was a good discussion.
Okay. But as we keep talking about it, that letter, of course, as it's absent in the pause for narrative difference in here, right? In the movies, we know why Gandalf isn't there. Right. If I was reading this first time, I'd have no idea where Gandalf is. I'd be in the same position as the hobbits. Yeah. Where is which now that I think about it is interesting, because Bilbo and the dwarves find themselves in the same spot right before they go to Mirkwood. Yeah. I think Gandalf leaves them. Yeah. So it's interesting that Gandalf is this, again, he's one of the Oh, the name's escaping. The Maiar. There we go.
Yeah.
He's one of the Maiar. He's a wizard in Istari, and he kind of like floats off on these little quests. It is, as far as we the reader can tell.
Yeah.
It's like where is he going? Like he's made this big thing about this being, this is the one ring. We have to destroy it. But then again, as you said, he can't interfere with Frodo's free will. So
yeah,
he attends to other things.
And he's not there to actually just fight the enemy by main strength. He's there to inspire and to stir up and to guide and to support and perhaps eventually to lead in some sense. But even that leadership only comes after Moria.
Yes.
There's a restraint. And I feel like it's not just, as a literary device, Gandalf's always disappearing on the quest and leaving people to handle things themselves. It's funny, it's irritating, but it does communicate you cannot count on him to save you. He's here to support you, but you have to do this yourself.
Mm-hmm. Which that whole concept is again another thing that'll color my further reading of the books is this theme of not self-reliance, but actually maybe self-reliance, right? You will always have inspiration around you. You will always have those that are encouraging you. My spiritual father growing up, Father Dean Huntalis, used to say all the time, God never abandons us, but we abandon him, right? Now, if we take the first part of that gets at what we're talking about, right? Which is Gandalf is, even if he's not there, he's there, right? His influence is there, kind of, nudging Frodo on, what would Gandalf say, right? And it's always, Gandalf, to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there is no greater champion for hobbits than Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah.
He says it multiple times over and over. Hobbits are really surprising and wonderful creatures. Yeah. And I believe even Saruman kind of makes fun of him for it, for your love for the halflings.
Sure.
And that might even be in the movies if I'm remembering properly. So seeing this, I think Gandalf's letter is just another extension of his love for the hobbits and knowing how he has to help Frodo on the quest.
Sure. But I think the hobbits, it's not just that he likes them or he cares for them. I think he sees in them almost an instantiation of the only proper and correct way to fight against evil.
Okay.
Because, like Gandalf functions like a hobbit too. He brings these small, weak, unimportant people out into the wide world. And he gives them the opportunity to make their own choices, to engage in the real peril and danger of the world, and to find that they can shift it, not by dominating other wills, but by being faithful, by being honest, by caring for the simple, wholesome, good things of the world. They make a difference. And that is the way in which he makes a difference. He doesn't take up residence in a massive tower and build an army of orc men to force people to his will. He wanders around with a staff and a hat, smoking and talking to people and sometimes badgering them, to really just to get out of their rut. But he doesn't force them to do anything. He gives them space to be themselves.
There's a line in the movie, the first one, that I think pays homage to that idea, where Frodo says to Gandalf, we were peaceful people, before you came along. And Gandalf says, if you're referring to that business with the dragon, I merely nudged your uncle out of the door. That's something to that effect.
Yeah.
And
And it's funny in the setting, but it's true. It's accurate.
Yeah. At the core of it, I mean, how many of us would love a nudge out of the door like that?
And then when we get it, we really end up resenting it.
Yeah, at least at first we do.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go through our own adventure, whatever that may be. And then we find at the end of it that we are, that was probably my favorite line from my reread of The Hobbit. Gandalf looks at Bilbo at one point and says, "You are not the same Hobbit that you were."
Yeah.
And how wonderful would it be for all of us to say that about ourselves after a trusted mentor or friend nudges us out of the door.
Yeah.
So, but anyways.
Any other thoughts on Aragorn's character, his introduction, and the disjunct between that whole sequence and the movies?
Not as of currently. I think I'd like to keep reading a little more and see. My understanding is that, as evident by the reading I've been doing so far, the hero's journey, as it were, belongs to Frodo. In the movies, it seems to belong to Aragorn a little more.
Mm-hmm.
There's all the drama with Arwen and her decision to stay with him, whatnot. Whereas Frodo and his quest is, it's there. The characterizations are not as deep with Frodo, though, in my opinion, in the movies as they are with Aragorn. There's no flashbacks for Frodo. There's no, this is the Hobbit I was. This is how Bilbo was, my family, whatever. A lot of it seems to be transferred to Aragorn. So while he may have more of that in the movies, the character still isn't as deep as he is in the book.
Sure.
So I think it's one of those things where I have to keep reading. But so far, it's interesting to see the differences as it is with all of them, of course. But kind of see where Tolkien's pulling influence from, right? I was really struck by the broken sword. For whatever reason, I really was. And this whole idea of that, I don't fully understand the role of the Rangers in Middle Earth yet, or at least in the lore. I imagine that I will as I keep reading. But the way that they're talked about is kind of cool. So
yeah, it's interesting you say the hero's journey, because certainly Jackson really hones in on Aragorn. He's one of the lead characters. He needs to have a journey. Where in the books, Aragorn's hero's journey is done. He's baked. He just needs to effectively complete the process. His troth has been plighted with Arwen, for decades. It's just awaiting this final test of the War of the Ring that he knows is coming. He already has embraced that he is the heir of Elendil and will take up the kingship of Gondor, or Gondor and everything else is going to just fade. But it stands or falls on Aragorn's success in taking that, not his willingness to do so.
Right. He's a little more reluctant in the movie.
A lot more reluctant. But anyway, I'm not ragging on the movies. Just it is an important difference. The other one that's interesting that you mentioned there, the hero's journey, I would submit just and suggest keep an eye out for this. I think that the idea that Frodo is the one that has the hero's journey is a little bit of a red herring. Because the one who actually has the hero's journey is Sam.
That makes a lot of sense as you say that, actually. That makes a ton of sense. Especially going back to George, I believe it was Jordan's note about Sam initially being a, quote, nobody.
Oh, no, Sam Cooke, yeah.
Sam Cooke, excuse me. I apologize.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, but
because as I did watch the movies in theaters, I was like, I think Sam might be my favorite character in the movies. Yeah. Like, very much so. That undying loyalty, the whole master gardener thing doesn't really come through in the movies for myriad reasons, but that makes a lot of sense that he is the one that undergoes the hero's journey.
Yeah. And I mean, all credit to Sean Astin. He did a great job.
Mhm.
He's very much in my mind when I read the books, even now, and yet doesn't do full credit to the character.
Sure.
Anyway,
Okay.
all right. So let's see. How about the journey itself? The way that
Mhm.
Tolkien builds the tension and builds the characters and kind of paints his world as they travel through the Chetwood and across the marshes toward Weathertop. How Tolkien does that versus how Jackson accomplished the job.
Mhm.
Before you answer, I'll say I think myself that sequence is one of the stronger points of the movie, as it remained in my memory before I reviewed it just now and after having done so. It's a journey. You're not going to show every step, you're not going to show every conversation,
Right.
but you can get across the sense of it. And even though it's not included, it's something that Jackson made up. That memorable interaction between Merry and Pippin with Aragorn and Second Breakfast is
Mhm.
it's charming.
Yeah. So as with the other things, of course, what I ran into as I read the books was the sequences in my head that are snappy and quick are actually very drawn out, are
Mm-hmm.
very long. And it gives time for the characters to grow, for us to see more of the characters. Like you mentioned, Tolkien builds the tension of going across the Chetwood and finally arriving at Amon Sûl. In I will admit to loving the line about second breakfast as well. That is something my friends and I say to each other. But it's not just about second breakfast. It's, have you had second this? Have you had second that? Right? But again, another one of those little hints that, the hobbits do love their comfort.
Yeah.
I think Pippin in the movie says something about 11sies or something to that effect. Excuse me. So I think the biggest striking difference, of course, is Weathertop itself. Um, I remember when I was a kid and I watched the movies for the first time. We probably had one of the Scholastic Book Fair things where they came to your library, and my ambitious little 7-8-year-old mind was like, I'm going to read Lord of the Rings because that has action in it. Right? I flipped through the book to the section where the Mines of Moria, where they find Balin's tomb, and I was like, "Where's the action?" It's like,
and at 7, of course, you're looking for action. You're thinking Batman, biff, pow, smack.
Correct. Not, oh wow, the battle was awful. Anyways, which is not a bad thing. Honestly, no criticism here, of course. But I had that experience there as well, right? Because in the movie, there's this whole big sequence where, Frodo falls asleep. The hobbits build a fire to eat, of course, and Frodo goes to put it out, but they give themselves away to the Black Riders.
Yeah.
In there, I get the sense that the Black Riders were always on their tail. It was only a matter of time until they found them. There was nothing that the hobbits nor Aragorn could do to prevent that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And what was also interesting, too, was in the movie, of course, there's this giant heroic sequence where Aragorn, at the last minute, it's after Frodo's gotten stabbed, but regardless, Aragorn jumps out. He's got his big sword. He's got it's not even a stick. It's like a torch.
Yeah.
And of course, in the inimitable style of Peter Jackson wanting to be cool, the sequence ends with Aragorn throwing it right into the Nazgul's face.
Which was the final frame of I think the teaser trailer for the trilogy when it first came out.
Oh, really?
That was that image is like burned, and I watched that so many times. Like, oh, it's gonna be amazing. Yeah.
Oh, and then you're like, oh.
I'll watch it again.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna have to find that then, see if that holds true. But anyways, so watching it, what was cool about the book again is you see that transference of the hero's journey. The Merry and Pippin, I believe, throw themselves to the ground in fear.
Yeah.
Sam I unfortunately I can't remember what Sam does, but Frodo takes a stand.
Yeah.
Right. He pulls his sword out. In the movie, he certainly does not.
Yeah.
Pulls his sword out, steps backwards, trips, and then just kind of lays there.
And then puts the ring on,
right.
as he sees them looming over him, like.
Yeah. And again, the movie doesn't really convey that very well, or maybe it does, I'm misremembering. But in the book, it comes across quite clear that as the beings who are influenced by Sauron encroach upon anybody that's holding the ring, the desire to use the ring it's temptation, right?
Yeah.
It's the Christian concept of temptation, right?
Yeah.
The closer you are to evil, the closer you want to use it, right? Or you're tempted by it.
Yeah.
So of course, Frodo.
I think it's more direct even than that. It's not just that they're close by. It means that there's a mechanical, like they are, they're functioning as demons. They are the active agents of temptation. They are urging him here.
Yes.
Do this thing that makes you more susceptible to our attack.
Mm-hmm. Well, while possibly having the thought that there is no connection, right?
Yeah.
Well, if I do this, X, Y, Z will happen, right? Frodo, if I put this on, they won't see me. Oh, whoops. So again, and that's just having to deal, that's something that he learns and deals with, but he takes a stand, which is a really cool divergence from what I had, seen in the movie a week or two prior.
Right.
And at the end, as he's passing out, because regardless of the stand that he takes, he's still a little hobbit facing down the Nazgul, right? There's no, the one of the maybe next step down from Sauron in terms of evil and power and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Aragorn leaps in with the two burning branches, and then Frodo, I believe, passes out or something to that effect. And so I think in terms of comparison, I like both sequences for various reasons, of course. That's one thing I'm learning as I keep reading is, okay, I appreciate what the movie is doing here. And I now the book is the fullness of it, right? But I get that those that were looking for something different with Aragorn were a little, okay, maybe not,
that sequence is fine with Aragorn. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. He is absent as well. I think when in both the book and the movie, he's absent when the Nazgul actually attack. He's going to look and figure out what's going on or something. If I'm not completely misremembering, I just read this with people. End of the knife in the dark. Strider is there. So Strider's there, and yet he's given instructions. That's what happens. So Strider's present.
He said, keep your backs to the fire and your faces outward.
Right. But Merry and Pippin quail. Sam shrinks close to Frodo. Frodo decides to take a stand, which probably is also, both brave. He is the best hobbit in the Shire, but also it makes him susceptible to the temptation because he puts himself out there. He puts the ring on, and therefore is visible, easily attacked then by the Nazgul. But but Strider is fine, I think, in both cases. I think Frodo's the one who gets done dirty in that sequence.
Yes, I would agree with that. After reading it, I think as a whole, Frodo gets, quote, done dirty.
Yeah. Because,
again, the transference of whose journey this actually is over to Aragorn, right? You kind of get the sense that if Aragorn doesn't do this, then Middle-earth is doomed. Whereas you mentioned, right, Aragorn risks it in the end of the Prancing Pony.
Yeah.
That's when the decision is made. But after that, okay, now the quest, we're back with Frodo. But again, in the movie, Frodo kind of just, this happens over and over again in the movie. Actually, Frodo kind of just seems fairly useless almost.
Yeah. And I think that's it comes back to that, sense of no one can resist the ring. And that plays out perhaps most of all on Frodo, because he's passive. He is, he has no agency. Because that's the thing. That is what Frodo does. He resists the ring as he bears it all of that time, and retains his identity, his strength. He doesn't give himself over to it, and maybe that's something we should reflect on too. That's why it's not a hero's journey for Frodo, because in terms of his hero's journey, as it were, he's baked. He, like Aragorn, he's done. He doesn't need to be shaped any longer. What happens to Frodo in the course of the books is he gets broken down. It's his trauma story. Is really what it is, from which he doesn't heal. And he kind of says that at the beginning. This is a completely different story from Bilbo's. He went to find a treasure and bring it home. I go to lose a treasure and probably not come back.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like he sees it from the beginning. This is not the hero's journey. I'm bearing a cross.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee that I will live to tell that tale, as it were.
And in the end, he doesn't. He's changed. Who he was is gone.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we'll talk again after that, after I get to the end, because that's most certainly that is one of the large changes in the movie, is that the journey back is not scourging, the scourging of the Shire. That's a very long thing, but just to drive this point home, right, of Frodo kind of being not useless in the books. It's at that moment Frodo threw himself forward on the ground, and he heard himself crying aloud, "O Elbereth, Gilthoniel." At the same time, he struck at the feet of the enemy. Right. So my mental image of Frodo was very much changed during that sequence, because I've watched Elijah Wood stare out into space for 20 years and trip on his feet and fall backwards as the Witch King stabs him. And then here you get someone bravely taking a stand and kind of paying for it, unfortunately. With as you said, a trauma.
Aragorn, the one thing that if we're going to nitpick Aragorn's presence here, this listeners have heard this before, because Father Tim said it. I think I've said this in 3 or 4 episodes now, but I'll say it again because it's a good point. In the book, Aragorn fights off the Nazgul with 2 flaming sticks because his sword in his sheath is broken. In the movie, he shows up with a sword, doing the impressive Aragorn action hero, sword play thing, and the flaming stick, which is the weapon that's actually effective. But to understand how completely, utterly beyond awesome Aragorn is, he is in the middle of the wilderness with no backup, with no help, defending 4 hobbits who, whatever their good intentions, are fundamentally useless. They
are not warriors.
Right. And he does it with 2 torches. Right. That's awesome. And as in terms of his character, his what he does, he's fine in the scene, but he would be cooler. Nonetheless, I do want to take this chance to show something fun. Father Timothy made this after our conversation, because we can bring the movie images and the book together, because what happens in the book is the 5 Nazgul are advancing on the 4 hobbits and Strider, and then Frodo pulls his sword, the sword that he got from the Barrow-wights, which we should go back and talk about that a little bit, because the Barrow was the grave of one of an ancient Dunedain, an ancient man of the West, who had been fighting for ages and ages against the Witch King of Angmar, who is the king of the Nazgul.
Cool.
And that means that over all of those hundreds, thousands of years, they made weapons expressly designed to break the spell of the rings on the Nazgul and be able to damage them. It never worked, but that's the sword, not Sting, that's the sword that Frodo draws. So that's why, as the Nazgul are advancing, he draws his sword, and some of them pause. The Witch King doesn't stop, but some of them do. So anyway, moving in on that, I'm going to share my screen again. So, Frodo draws his sword. We're going to do him one better than he was. And the Nazgul backs away. He's got a sword. Now, anyone who grew up in the 90s, you idiots. We've all got swords. and there they come. So, anyway, that actually, this makes me deeply, deeply happy because it brings together the movie and the book to and somehow makes Aladdin relevant to Lord of the Rings.
That bit about the Barrow was really cool. Because I went back and saw it. Desperate, he drew his own sword, and it seemed to him that it flickered red, as if it was a firebrand. Two of the figures halted. For some reason, I went right over that the first time I read it, but that actually, I didn't tell this story yet, but I think it would be cool. After we got done watching Fellowship of the Ring in theaters, a couple of rows in front of us, a guy had brought his friends with him, and he was clearly the Tolkien scholar out of all of them. And he was talking about the light that Galadriel gives to Frodo.
To Frodo. And then Sam carries it later, but yeah.
And that was the first day that I learned about Ungoliant, or Ungoliant. In that, Ungoliant is the mother of Shelob, the giant spider that, of course, attacks Frodo. And the light is left over from the light that she devoured at the behest of Melkor Morgoth.
Yep.
And so when Sam brings that in the movie, because I don't know what happens in the book, when Sam brings that light to fight against Shelob, it's the light that was swallowed by Ungoliant coming back, not for revenge, but it's one of those just amazing lore connections that I never would have made for not this, happenstance comment that I overheard in the theater. And
sure,
it's the same thing right there with the Barrow, right? Like this story is so well thought out, and there's just these, and none of the connections feel cheap
because they're not. They're built on a lifetime of poring over them, of sweating over them, of reflecting on what actually makes the most sense.
And if I may take a swipe at our current culture of fan service, it's very refreshing to not have something feel cheap.
Yeah,
something like it's not necessary for you to understand and follow the story. But once you go back and read something else like the Silmarillion, everything starts to gain even more weight.
Yes.
Right. Feel important, which is just one of the reasons why this work is so beloved. It makes complete sense.
It's reverse fan service. It's like, here is something that you don't know about, and you can enjoy the story without ever paying attention. But if you decide to scratch the surface and dig into this, you will be richly repaid, and you will watch this again, and it will read like brand new to you. And that's what cool. Fan service actually ought to be.
Yes, I agree.
Not cheap, not manipulative, just deep and beautiful. All right. Let's see. Let's go back to the Barrow-wight, because we should talk about that. Things that maybe make the Barrow-wights a little bit relevant, because you kind of said this seems, out of nowhere. This seems weird. So first of all, the Barrow is a grave, and that kind of features this is part of just the landscape of England, and specifically where Tolkien lives, because I was actually just reading lately, in Oxfordshire itself, or maybe in I think Berkshire next door, there is a barrow that's called Wayland's Smithy. So it's supposed to have been like the barrow, have something to do with the smith god. Anyway, but there are lots of these burial mounds around England, and the idea that as they're running away from Black Riders, who are effectively they're servants of Sauron, the Necromancer.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Who are themselves, they never died. Their one life is stretched thin, like Gollum, or like Bilbo describes, or like we see Gollum, but ever so much more so that they're invisible, they're wraiths. But their servants are literally undead ghosts who've been brought back, by the necromancy of Sauron or his servants, to possess dead bodies, or again, we're talking deep, creepy horror, zombie, vampire, type stuff here. Except Tolkien doesn't develop it in detail. It's just it's a wight. It's a dead thing that is alive. It's a monster, right? It's inhabited. It's taken over this barrow. It's taken over its treasure. And it's using that treasure to capture and ensnare other living beings with the intent of making them also undead to some degree, which is why when Frodo wakes up and there's this spell, this is a servant of Sauron who's looking for the return of Melkor Morgoth, the Dark Lord of darkness and death, and wants to burn everything down. It's nihilism, taking someone else's flesh and using it inside of a grave.
Oof.
Okay, so it's all the creepy stuff.
Yeah,
and Frodo calls for help, and we have what is effectively, stealing, Father Andrew's thesis from a paper he wrote. We have a literal harrowing of hell.
Oh,
when Tom Bombadil comes in, breaks the spell, rescues the captives, brings them out. And then awesome. Pulls all of the treasure out and turns that treasure back towards the destruction of the undead, the wights, the powers of death. Add to that in the timeline we find out that the day before, 24 hours before, the Witch King himself had been on the Barrow Downs in the course of his search for Frodo and the ring. So he's within miles of where the ring bearer actually is while they're sleeping under Tom Bombadil's protection. This wight is not just capturing them willy-nilly, it's looking for them. And this wight, again, is an evil spirit that came out of Angmar, which is the kingdom that the Witch King had ruled 2,000 years before, and took up residence in this grave. So this is effectively another encounter, apparently disconnected because the hobbits are clueless. They don't know what's going on. But as we dig more deeply, looking for, again, that, the actual connections, this is another encounter with servants of Sauron, and specifically servants of the Witch King. And yet, that is what's turned to ultimately the undoing of the Witch King, because it's not just Frodo that gets a sword there. Sam gets a sword, Pippin gets a sword, Merry gets a sword.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, anyway, for a little bit more on the Barrow Down, and then as a maybe possibly a slight clue to whenever you get around to listening to the other podcast episodes, the striking thing is Tom Bombadil lives very, very far away. They've been traveling all day long. When they sing a poem and call to him, he's there instantly. That's a little bit sus. Anyway,
Tom, I can only take so much ambiguity.
All right.
That's cool. That Mary connection. God, man. I get it. I've been texting friends and saying, I get why this is one of the best things ever. These books are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So let's move on. I think a couple more things. I want to talk about the first introduction of Athelas. Because I don't think that shows up. Does it show up at all in the theatrical version of the movies? I know it's there in the extended edition, and I was struck actually that it is a little bit of fan service. Aragorn specifically sends Sam to go look for Athelas. He tells him it's King's Foal. He says, that's a weed. He says, yeah, but it might help. Go find some. And then Arwen shows up, and the plot is basically abandoned. Yeah. But with Aragorn going and looking for it, and finding it in the books, that foreshadows a lot more. And as does, a little bit previous, before the Black Riders attack, that most substantial summary of the Silmarillion material that we get, I think, anywhere in the book itself outside the appendices, with the lay of Luthien. Aragorn sings, and then he sums up the whole background of the Silmarillion there. How do all those elements strike you as a first time reader, especially since, to my knowledge, you'd never even heard of the Silmarils before reading this chapter?
That would be correct. A point of reference: the versions that were in the theaters were the extended editions.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Yeah,
that's good. You get your money's worth. Because those didn't show in the theaters, actually. Now I'm kind of bummed. Oh.
Yeah, I grew up watching the extended of Two Towers and then the theatrical of Fellowship and Return.
Well, I would have flipped that.
The older I've gotten, the more I've started to go just all extended to kind of get all I can. But anyways, it was cool. So you're correct in saying that I don't, and even now I still don't have a full conception of what the Silmarils are. Obviously, the Silmarillion is named for them or with them. I know the extent of my knowledge of the early days of Middle Earth are that Iluvatar creates. He gifts music to the elves,
to the Ainur, to the powers before he even makes. Anyway, go ahead.
But even that there is a great illustration of how the early days of Middle Earth are still kind of murky to me, as it were. I do know about the two trees of the Valinor. Is that correct?
Yeah, the two trees of the Valar. Yeah,
and that they were destroyed by Melkor Morgoth and Ungoliants.
Right.
And that's where I kind of lose the summary, as it were, because I haven't read the Silmarillion yet. But it was. I recognized I saw the name Silmarils and like, oh, that probably relates, right? There's another kind of hint from Tolkien saying, hey, that there's more to this story.
Yeah.
Right. I don't really know their connection to Athelas. When I read it, of course, the movie scene started playing in my head where Sam's like, what are you talking about? And you go, King's Foil, right? Yeah. I think it was one of those details that kind of escaped me because I was more caught up in the fact of, again, the flight to the Ford being more of a 3-week journey than where in the movies it's Frodo's not even he can't even communicate. Like
he's like catatonic almost.
Exactly. Right. But in this one, he's talking up a storm. He's feeling better. He's feeling worse. And so my brain was very much focused on that. But again, as we keep talking, the more I'm like, I can hear about the Silmarillion, the more I'm just like, I just want to read that,
Well, you'll get to it. I would suggest you'll finish the Lord of the Rings first. Athelas, though, when you're talking about a plant and it says King's Foil, the foil part of that refers to the leaf, so it's King's Leaf.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which means what Athelas smells like.
Okay.
Because can you translate Kingsleaf into Greek?
Um, Vasilev something would be
Or
my
maybe
guess.
Vasiliko?
That's cool. Basil.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, which was where the cross was found.
Uh-huh.
Oh man,
Right? Life to the dying in the king's hand lying. Well, you haven't seen that poem yet. Never mind. Um,
that's
but
so cool though.
there's some fun, really deep
Yeah.
cuts to the Christian tradition that I cannot believe that are accidental for Tolkien.
No, there's no way. There's
Um,
absolutely no way.
but
Um,
anyway,
someone as steeped in etymology as Tolkien, there's no way that's a coincidence.
yeah,
And that's way too cool.
yeah.
And obviously that I believe that tradition would be preserved in the Catholic tradition. I'm not positive, but yeah, anyways.
Fun stuff there. So
That is.
very good. And then finally, you were ready to talk about this a couple times. Let's get at the Glorfindel issue.
Sure.
I mean, myself, I was a teenager about to go to college as the movies were being made. So I knew before it happened in the film that Glorfindel wasn't going to appear. The fan websites had been all over the casting of Liv Tyler as Arwen, and photos from the film sets had been out for years, including one showing clearly Liv Tyler like riding the horse with a clear puppet, like a mannequin of Frodo, because of course Elijah Wood is not actually 3 feet, 4 feet shorter than Liv Tyler. I'd seen stills, I knew what was going to happen. And yet I was still hoping that it would be wrong and they'd bring Glorfindel and they would decide, this is a stupid idea, let's do it right. Now, for you, Zach, having seen Arwen in that role first, it has to have been almost the opposite. How did it strike you to see Glorfindel instead in the book?
It was kind of one of those things that was built up for me. I believe I mentioned it earlier. I'd been talking with a friend at seminary and had probably rewatched the movies again for the umpteenth time and mentioned that sequence. He goes, "Well, you don't even know about Glorfindel." I'm like, "You're right. I have no idea who that is."
Glorfindel? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Who is this man? Right. And so seeing him for the first time, his description is very. I like that you mentioned Tolkien's writing being cinematic because that's what his description is. I believe he's described as having golden hair.
Yeah.
If I don't want to say that his description sounds like Jesus because that's not exactly right, but something akin to an angel or a divine being.
Or maybe a saint. Who is the saint who says, if you will, you can become all flame? Right.
I don't remember, unfortunately.
It's one of the Desert Fathers, but
yeah. But right to that point, it's again the striking thing is that Frodo is riding by himself.
Yeah.
So I've grown up with the puppet, as it were, right, flopping about on Liv Tyler's horse stand-in.
If you want him, come and claim him.
Okay. And Frodo, but again, Frodo is by himself, and he's taking a stand as much as he can.
Yeah.
And then Glorfindel is there as well. Glorfindel, to me, is probably another connection to the early days of Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what those connections are yet. I'm looking forward to reading them. But it's clear that he has some.
Sure. You want me to tell you? Because it doesn't actually come up until you get deep into the Silmarillion.
Oh, sure.
So,
Night of Revelation. So,
all right. So Glorfindel was an elf in the ancient elf kingdom of Gondolin, which you might recognize because that's where the swords came from.
Mm-hmm.
And when Gondolin was betrayed and the exiles, were leaving, including Elrond's father as a little boy, going kind of, you can kind of think of the survivors from Troy escaping from the city. It resonates like that. They're going through the mountain passes when they are waylaid by a Balrog.
Oh, okay.
And Glorfindel, on the top of the peak, does single combat with the Balrog and both of them die.
Oh, that sounds a little bit like the Two Towers.
Yeah, well, both of them die. So how does Glorfindel come back, we might ask? Well,
I do.
elves don't die permanently. It's the thing about elves. They are immortal, so that when an elf dies, its soul goes back to the halls of Mandos in Valinor.
Okay.
And then they can be reborn. Not as someone else, but as themselves. So Glorfindel has been reborn and has come back to Middle-earth to labor and serve and help. So that's who Glorfindel is.
Man, this stuff is just awesome. Like, that's, how, not to sound corny, but how metal is that? Do single combat against a Balrog.
Yeah. The only thing that would almost make it cooler would be if one of his sword, if Glamdring or Orcrist were his sword. But Glamdring, I believe, was the sword of the king of Gondolin, which would therefore be Elrond's great grandfather, I guess. Orcrist belonged to a different captain of Gondolin.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's just as a very small humorous tangent, I believe the idea that in the Silmarillion there's not just one Balrog going around, but multiples.
Yeah.
And battles are being fought. I'm like, this sounds like fun. From a coolness standpoint, but also there's the whole journey of Morgoth as the first of the fallen beings, as my understanding, would be very cool to go through and see. Now, what is all of that, and how does it affect things that come in the Third Age as the quest to destroy the ring comes about? But then also, of course, there are the awesome names like Gothmog, King of the Balrogs.
Yeah. So the one other thing, again, because I just looked at it, I don't think it wasn't effective to me. But in the movies, what they do with light, and it's not quite clear, is this actually how Arwen looks to everyone, or is it how she looks to Frodo with the bright light behind her? And that they're trying. I think the intent there is they're trying to show her as though she's glowing from within, like Glorfindel is described. But to me, it only strikes me as, okay, she looks like she's just really badly backlit, and I can't see who it is, as it were. But I don't know, because I got a critical eye, and it wasn't Glorfindel, so I was not going to be sold from the beginning. How does that strike you?
In the movie, I think it's said that Aragorn might say, like, one of the hobbits asked, well, what's happening to Mr. Frodo or whatever, and he said he's passing into the other realm.
Yeah,
I think that's how it's phrased. So if the elves are, not to get too into hypostases, right, but they're made of a different substance than the other beings?
No.
Okay. No. There's like this divinity that seems to be buried within the elves.
Yeah, that's sort of the big question, because they come across that way, but what it really, I think, is they're fully integrated, they're whole, they're not at war within themselves. They are the most fully, again, their destiny is tied to the earth. They begin with it and they end with it. So they're not actually immortal. They live as long as the world itself lives. And yet they are both spiritual and physical beings. They have a soul. Tolkien's term for it is a fea, and they have a body. His term is a chroa. And hopefully I'm saying that right. And yet their life is bound to the circles of the world, where men are not bound to the circles of the world. So anyway,
Sure.
This is the other thing that's missing, right? And it's both one of the things that I loved about the extended versions, because when Aragorn is singing about Luthien, and they say, what happened to her, this the one you're singing about, and he said she loved a mortal, and they said, well, what happened to her, and she said she died. Well, that's a big deal, because she really died. Not an elf death where she could come back. She died as a mortal. She, if I can quote a different Disney movie, she changed her fate. Okay, I did not expect to be quoting Brave, here, but
I haven't seen that in years. Wow.
But that's what's important about Arwen. That she also joins her destiny to Aragorn. She forsakes that elven nature and becomes human. Right.
Right.
And I know at the end of the sequence, after the flood comes down, she says, whatever virtue was given to me, let it pass to him, or something.
Sure.
That's not in the books.
No, most certainly not. Just to put a pin in this, because I think I didn't fully answer this. In the movies, the way that she's lit by the cinematographer, because of the way that it's edited, I don't get the sense that that's how she's perceived by everybody. Because immediately after that, we kind of get Frodo's POV.
Yeah.
And so as someone who's perceiving a spiritual realm, he sees her spiritual side, right? You talk about the wholeness. They're not at war with themselves, as it were, like a man might be, a member of the race of men.
That's at least my stab at how to describe that apparent divinity in the elves.
Yeah,
there's a lot more going on there, but.
So I think that as Frodo's occupying the spiritual realm, not going the great way, right? Because of course he's being poisoned by the dagger.
Yeah.
But he's able to perceive that, right? Not unlike a demon might perceive an angel, right? Or if we're getting really technical, right? The Hesycasts will perceive the uncreated light.
Yeah.
They can, because they have joined themselves, or they have taken off what they need to be part of the spiritual realm, or see it more clearly. A priest used to say that it's almost like at the end of the Matrix, when Neo sees the green lines for the first time, he sees things the way they actually are.
Right.
So that's how I took what Jackson was doing in that sequence.
Yeah.
Where Frodo's seeing her, but again, right after Frodo hears her for the first time, it cuts to Aragorn and her looking at Frodo, and
it's
looks
normal. Yeah. So I think really then Jackson did a pretty good job with a really difficult challenge of imagery. Yeah.
Sure.
As you say. So.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on all of that?
Man, it's I guess just in summation, there's a lot going on. Not to make an obvious point, but there's such a richness to this world that you can probably only get by rereading it once a year or once every 2 years. I imagine there are many people who have read this book in perpetuity until their passing.
Yeah.
And, have plumbed most of the depths, but maybe not all of them, because the story is just so huge. And, even if I were to read all of the Fellowship and then the Silmarillion, there's still, the fall of Gondolin, the children of Húrin, the history of Middle Earth, which I understand are not typical narratives. They're more kind of going through the story with Tolkien as he's writing it.
Yeah, they're looking at the draft. So you see, how did these stories come together from the very beginning through to, the final product.
So it's just a beautiful thing to go through these and kind of be shepherded by those that have read it before me and make these connections early, which compel me to read even further. So I think this entire sequence from Crickhollow all the way over to Rivendell is just a very good microcosm or synecdoche of Tolkien's writing style, his world building, and I joked with a friend, how can it amazes me that some fantasy authors read that and went, all right, now it's my turn to try. Because if I read that, I'd be like, nope, it's tough.
Yeah, it's hard not to look at it and just think, not just see a money grab. Like, ooh, I could eke some living off of being a parasite on this. But,
sure. But anyways,
yeah,
there are good fantasy books out there. I will say there are good ones, but I do believe they all stand in the shadow of Lord of the Rings.
It's hard not to.
Sure.
Anything else you want to bring up, Zach?
No, I think that we covered.
Then I think this pretty much wraps up our discussion. And with that, we'll close the cover on book 1. I wrote earlier, yesterday, and then realized we actually need to talk about this. Tolkien, at least at one point, wanted to publish the books either as a single volume, like I think you have a single volume copy now, and what he really wanted was to publish it, a single volume Lord of the Rings next to the single volume of the Silmarillion as like a package set, so people could have the whole thing together. Or if you couldn't do that because his publisher said, we can't put all of that between 2 covers, that's not possible, especially not with paper being still rationed in post-war England and everything. So his next idea apparently was, we'll publish it in 6 volumes. And it actually divides up pretty neatly into 6 books. Now, around 2000, the publishers issued what they called the Millennium Edition, and it's actually behind me on the shelf there, that boxed set with the red covers and so forth. And during COVID, I had the publishers actually allowed people to read those books aloud and post them. So I read through the whole of Lord of the Rings on YouTube during COVID, and that was a ton of fun. So I actually got to read the book and then close it. All right, now we're done. And I was all ready to just go through and find the titles of those individual volumes until I realized they don't show up in the normal books.
No.
So that means I get to share here what those volume titles were. So book 1 was called The Ring Sets Out. And book 2, The Ring Goes South, which is also one of the chapter titles. Book 3 was The Treason of Isengard. Book 4 was The Ring Goes East. Book 5, The War of the Ring. And book 6, The End of the Third Age. So, having explained what I'm talking about, now we will close the cover on book 1, The Ring Sets Out. Next time, Rivendell. So now, on this retrospective conversation, we've in this retrospective conversation, I should say, we've talked a lot about the book, but we actually haven't read much from it. So I'm really glad we're getting to this section where we always ask our guest hosts to read a selection of their own choice. So it's such a pleasure to get to see and hear Tolkien's works from someone else's perspective. So Zach, what do you have for us today?
So I, as soon as I finished the section for the podcast today, which was, of course, ending at book 1, The Flight to the Ford, I took a small break, and then just in the last couple of days have gone back in. As Lent started, I figured I needed something that has very Christian themes in it, so I'm like, I'm going to keep reading this, right? So I'm in the middle of the Council of Elrond, which, of course, as a moviegoer, is a great sequence that unfortunately has been memed to death because of a couple of things that are said during that. So it's cool to see the new perspective. But what's interesting is we get Gandalf's story. We've been wondering as readers, where has Gandalf been? Well, guess what? Here, not just Gandalf's story, but Elrond's story from when he was young. Elrond's story from, okay, what happened how did the ring get where it is? How did the ring get to right here? But there was one sequence where Gandalf was talking that I just found to be profound in a way that works on a couple of levels. So I guess without further ado, I'll just read it.
Beautiful.
Time passed with many cares until my doubts were awakened again to sudden fear. Whence came the hobbit's ring? What, if my fear was true, should be done with it? Those things I must decide. But I spoke yet of my dread to none, knowing the peril of an untimely whisper if it went astray.
Mm-hmm.
In all the long wars with the Dark Tower, treason has ever been our greatest foe. And the reason that stuck out to me a lot is because, for whatever reason, over the last couple of weeks, months, I've been thinking a lot about how we talk to people, how we talk to each other. We are in the midst of a time where we are constantly and unendingly connected to each other through our phones, right? Through our phones, through social media, which includes things like YouTube and whatnot. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Medium is the message. But anyways, and I realized that information used to move slower. And it's kind of another Captain Obvious moment, but information used to move slower. And even now, of course, you are careful with your words, but I just adored the way that he described that. He said, knowing the peril of an untimely whisper if it went astray. And how many times do we, just in this information age, have an untimely whisper that goes astray?
Yeah.
Right? And just if we were a little quieter, or maybe a little more less eager to divulge things that we're thinking, can we prevent these things from going astray and maybe coming back to hurt us in ways that we don't intend? And that he says, too, to cap it off, in all the long wars with the Dark Tower, treason has ever been our greatest foe, which means that even amongst friends throughout Middle-earth, you can't really know where allegiances lie, which, now that I think about it, would mean that him vouching for Aragorn is a big deal.
Yeah.
So it was a short passage, but it really struck me when I read it last night, and I even wrote it down too. I was like, that's good advice in general. So
Gandalf is so full of good advice. I think we said this way back a year ago when you were on the podcast, and you said you wanted to be like Gandalf because, frankly, anyone in any kind of pastoral work, I think Gandalf is a preeminent icon of circumspection and respect and care and wisdom and love, and anyway, yeah,
and enjoying a good smoke when you need it.
Yes, and being very down to earth about it. Beautiful. Sure. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate you sharing. You pick pithy and meaningful little bits. Beautiful.
Right.
All right. Now, I hate to tear us away from this beautiful diversion, but it is now time for something completely different. That's right. It's now time for a little segment I like to call They're Taking the Hobbits to Isengard. All right, Zach. Now is the time, once again, when you get to play for absolutely no prizes, a little game which will test whether you are a true Tolkien fan whom everyone should listen to, or whether we've just wasted 2 hours and 45 minutes or so of everyone's time. The format here is one that I inherited from my dad and his brothers, who used to play this trivia game with each other. I think you remember the rules, but I'll recount them because I have adjusted them a little bit over the last year. So one of us will read a quote from Tolkien's works, and the other has to tell who the speaker is. Bonus points can also be earned if we can provide the context. So one might hear a quote and just guess a speaker and be right. But if you can also guess the context, then you can get a bonus point.
Okay.
So you get a full point if you know the speaker, and you get an additional half point if you can provide the context too. So
Okay.
The rules for the quotations are generally as follows, and then we'll actually add a more specific limitation on my part at least. So the quotations will be an actual quotation by an actual named character. No narrator gotchas. No, they said, blah, blah.
Right, right.
2, it will be either a full sentence from capitalized word at the beginning to final punctuation at the end, or a sentence fragment, if that's all that is quoted. It doesn't have, because there's a lot of sentence fragments, as it were. And 3, it will only be taken from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And 4, because you're a first-time reader, my quotes for you, at least, will only be from Book 1, these chapters that we've already read. Because it wouldn't really be fair if I threw in anything else. And that does mean that we need to be careful, because sometimes there's a long narrative where someone's recounting a story and quoting different people. If that happens and you pull a quote from there, even if, say, it's Gandalf talking about what Saruman said, the correct answer is Gandalf was the speaker, but he's quoting Saruman. So
sure,
we need to be aware of that. So, and yes, the other part is we will ask each other. You get to stump me too. Since you are a return guest host, since you haven't finished the books yet, we're limited to The Hobbit, I should say, and Book 1, what you've read so far. And since you're a return guest host, I'll let you ask me 3 questions, and I'll just ask you 2. So long as you have 3 quotes. Otherwise, I can pick up the slack. But
okay.
Very good.
I do have 3 today for
Perfect. If we get 3 or more points together, we survive. If not, then meat is back on the menu and the Uruk-hai have a party. So,
well, we don't want that.
No. So, are you? We should be fine. I mean, 5 quotes between the we've got. Let's see, what's 5 times 1.5? We've got ample space. I'm a priest, not a mathematician.
Yeah, I was about to say I went to seminary because I wasn't good at math.
It's at least 5. 6, 7.5, I guess. So, so you ready?
Sure.
Okay. You ask me first because you get 3 questions and I get 2. My category to you, however, will be drama.
Oh, okay. You can trust us to stick to you through thick and thin to the bitter end, and you can trust us to keep any secret of yours closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word.
So you gave me a softball. That's Mary in the house at Crickhollow.
You got it.
All right. So I will score myself. I am not going to go as easy on you. So
that's quite right.
All right. My quote for you. They are very large.
Oh, I'm getting eaten today.
No, we're in this together.
I think you've got me, unfortunately.
At least make a guess. It's from that either the Hobbit or that first book.
They are very large. My guess would be that is a quote from Frodo finding out what Farmer Maggot gave him.
Unfortunately, no. I'll read you the full quote. There are trolls, Pippin panted. Down in a clearing in the woods, not far below. We got a sight of them through the tree trunks. They are very large. We will come and see them, said Strider, picking up a stick. Frodo said nothing, but Sam looked scared. So,
nope.
There we go. All right. So now question number 2 for me.
Yes. Well, if I were you, I should stop your young friends from talking too much. Drink, fire, and chance meeting are pleasant enough, but well, this isn't the Shire. There are queer folk about.
Yeah, so I am all but certain that's Aragorn, Strider. They're in the common room at the Prancing Pony.
Yes, we outpace the Uruk-hai. Thanks
all right,
to
we are good. Now we're just playing for honor and glory, as we used to say.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. I am still not going easy on you. Your second question is, the spear in my heart.
Oh, man. That sounds like oh, man. The drama of that sounds like something Gandalf would say, but I don't think that's correct.
You want to think about it some more?
No, you got me again, unfortunately.
Very good. All right, so I'll read the full. Well, go ahead and guess. You said Gandalf, but
if I were to guess, that it's Gandalf being dramatic about something. Being dramatic about Bilbo's refusals. Bilbo probably called him something in the early chapter of The Hobbit, which, again, I just read it, so this is my memory is not what it once was.
Good guess, but no. So this is actually from Fog on the Barrow Downs.
Okay.
It's after Tom Bombadil pulls them out. What in the name of wonder? Began Merry, feeling the golden circlet that had slipped over one eye. Then he stopped, and a shadow came over his face, and he closed his eyes. Of course, I remember, he said. The men of Carn Dûm came on us at night, and we were worsted. The spear in my heart! He clutched at his breast. No, he said, opening his eyes. What am I saying? I have been dreaming. Where did you get to, Frodo?
Oh, man. Yeah, I as I was getting ready for this, I was like, I gotta be very particular, but I'll still give quite a few sentences. And then the skullduggery comes in, and I'm like, I brought a fists to a knife fight.
Well, next time you come back, you can do just a single sentence and make it hard, because I did not go easy on you.
That's quite all right.
For fame and glory, you want to give me the third the third quote you got?
Yes. There's food in the wild, berry, root, and herb, and I have some skill as a hunter at need.
That's Strider in the inn at Bree, as he's explaining to them how they'll eat.
You got the speaker.
So maybe it's not there, but it's in the Chetwood.
Yes.
Fair enough. But all right.
Yep.
Well, 1 point then.
Good enough for me, that's for sure.
Well, so we got 4 points between the two of us, which means that we escaped. We escaped being eaten or looted by the Uruk-hai today, and we've remained unspoiled to quiz another day. Because we're not playing against each other, we're in cooperation.
Right. As we should be with God, right?
That's right. We didn't beat up and chase the Uruk-hai away screaming, but we survived.
Hey, good enough for me, right?
Indeed. And that's all we've got for today. Zach, thank you so much for co-hosting the Amon Sûl podcast with me today. It's always a joy to talk to you. It's always a joy to be reminded how beloved those films are, and to have the chance to see them through your eyes instead of my jaded eyes. And and it's just a treat to get to talk and visit and to watch you having the same response and different responses too. It's sure. A treat for me. I hope it's a treat for the listeners. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being good-natured about not being the biggest nerd in the room on this particular subject. It's really a delight and a joy. Thank you so much.
No, I share the sentiment. Of course, it is a joy to see you and talk with you and share this with not just you but all of the listeners. And I was laughing because I'm going back on the Lord of the Rings podcast not knowing nearly as much as most of the listeners. So it is my prayer and hope that this is edifying for them as well, and they get to share in the joy of revelation that I'm having as I continue reading these books. So I love doing this. So
beautiful. We will definitely bring you back again.
thank you.
Maybe after Moria.
Yes, I would love to break down again Tolkien's penchant for phenomenal names. It holds true in that we meet Durin's Bane.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
amazing stuff.
All right, next time on Amon Sûl, I will be joined by returning host Steve Christoforou as we enter the protected valley of Rivendell, and the podcast returns to the last homely house for the first time in quite a while. Now, I actually said last episode that this is what we'd be doing this time, but I forgot about the retrospective, so you all get to hear me announce Steve's return twice. You can send your questions, comments, topic suggestions, orcish ideas for their Taking the Hobbits to Isengard, or guest co-host proposals, or photos of your favorite candidate for a real live Weathertop. All of these can be sent to me at amonsul@ancientfaith.com, or you can message me through the podcast Facebook page.
If you want more of this kind of thing, subscribe to the Amon Sûl podcast on your favorite podcast app, and please rate and review. And look up the Amon Sûl podcast page on Facebook, click the follow button. Most of all, though, share with your friends. And while you're at it, if you appreciate this or other Ancient Faith media, go to ancientfaith.com/support and show some practical love.
We've been around since 2019, and you can find our full back catalog of episodes by going to tolkienpodcast.com or just, subscribe on your podcast app. The Amon Sûl podcast theme music is Hidden Past, and the closing theme is Celtic Impulse, both by Kevin MacLeod, whose music you can find at incompetech.com.
Our podcast cover art was created by Samuel Hebel. Our video editors/media wranglers are Simon Nelson and Mike DeGan.
And special thanks go to the Amon Sûl Facebook group for conversation, inspiration, and giving me at least one good reason to not quit social media completely. I am your host, Father Anthony Cook, and even though Father Andrew wonders when I'm going to run out of silly jokes to say about him every time he hears me say it, this has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.